Hi, welcome back guys, this is your friend, WTFW with another fiction. What if Deku heroes in a Naruto world now? Before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Felicity was bored. After watching Naruto with the MHA audience, and with her audience back with Kiddo watching the Miku, she felt totally bored, and with nothing to do. What I can do? I want to have fun, even if it's just a little bit. When an idea suddenly occurred to her that could break her out of her boredom. There was already a deity who had done something similar, so why not do it too? If I show the heroes of the world of My Hero Academia future events that will occur in their world, orchestrated by the League's villains and the Meta Liberation Army. Oh yeah, this sounds like something very entertaining. And the main universe will not be affected since my intervention will create an alternate timeline, like Bulma's time machine. Already more excited about the plan, she got to work, preparing everything to carry out her plan. Unlike what she had previously done with her audience when they watched Naruto, she decided not to be physically present with them, although she was going to supervise everything that happened to be able to entertain herself. But this time she would send them a collection of tapes with the events that happened and will happen. She wanted to show them and would leave the rest in their hands. While it was likely that at least at first they would take it as some kind of joke, she was sure that eventually they would believe her. She also decided that the best course of action, if she wanted her audience to take what she was going to show them seriously, was to talk to Nezu first. Although it was going to be difficult at first, she was sure that he would believe her and take the necessary steps to make it happen. Once she gathered everything she needed, she teleported to the world of MHA. Nezu's office. The first thing Nezu saw when he entered his office was a red-haired girl, with fox ears and a tail, sitting in the chair behind his desk. He was too shocked by the fact that an intruder had broken into not only his office, but the highly guarded and secure UA campus. He didn't react for a few seconds. Before he could say anything though, the girl spoke up. "I was waiting for you, Director Nezu," the girl said calmly, as if she was the owner of the room. "Who are you, and how did you get in here?" the director asked in turn, very concerned about the possible existence of a failure in the security system that would put the UA at risk. "My name is Felicity, and I am a deity. And as for how I got in, simple, I teleported here, but you don't have to worry about that. I don't plan on hurting anyone," she explained with reassurance. These words surprised Nezu, and he did not let his guard down. A deity? What does that mean? He thought, using his quirk to try to understand the situation. "And before you ask, I have come here for one simple reason, which is to warn you about catastrophic events that will occur in the future in your world," Felicity said, surprising Nezu greatly. "A catastrophe? What do you mean with that?" he asked, quite surprised and worried. "I won't tell you much since I'd rather you see it yourself," Felicity said, handing him a VHS tape and a piece of paper. "In this tape, you will find information that will answer many of your questions. Some of the events you will see have already occurred, but they lay the foundation for understanding the catastrophe that will occur very soon if things continue as before. In other words, you will see events that have already happened and a possible future for your reality," she explained. "I will give you more later. I have also given you a list with the names of the people who should also see this information." "Understood," Nezu said as he read the list that Felicity had given him. Thanks," Nezu added with hesitation. He was still wrapping his mind around this. But he figured he should go with what this lady is saying. He is sure he'll understand later. "Listen, I know it sounds impossible, and you can dismiss all of this as a joke. Or you can view this information alongside the people on the list and gain a huge advantage against the calamity that will occur. In the best of cases, they could avoid a great tragedy," Felicity said, now quite serious. "Also, that tape has a special protection that will only disappear once all the people on the list are gathered. So you won't be able to see it until everyone has gathered. Well, I leave it in your hands. Goodbye." With that, she disappeared to Nezu's surprise. Nezu, although he still had his doubts, decided to take the warning seriously and do what Felicity had indicated, partly out of curiosity and partly in response to the warning of imminent danger, which with the increase in villain activity since All Might's retirement. It was not a minor fact. The next day class at dormitories. That morning, while preparing for classes, the students of class A received a message from their principal announcing that all classes for the day had been canceled and that they had to go to the auditorium in 1 hour. Although quite surprised by this, they prepared themselves as quickly as they could and then headed to the auditorium following the director's instructions. When they arrived, they saw Class B who had already arrived. Well, look who just arrived. Monoma greeted them in a mocking tone. Class A is late in a pathetic attempt to get attention. Not like Class B, Kendo slapped him to silence him. I apologize for that, Kendo said, quite embarrassed by Monoma's attitude. It's okay. You don't need to apologize. Ida responded on behalf of his class to the representative of Class B. That guy seriously needs help. Ashido whispered. Those who heard here nodded. Well, do you know why we were summoned to the auditorium? Hagakure asked to change the subject. No, we just received a message from the principal saying that all classes had been cancelled and that we should go to the auditorium, Shota said. In fact, we were going to ask you if you knew anything. Nope. We got the same message. We don't know anything else either, Siro said, scratching the back on his head in confusion. Well, this is strange, Yayurazu said. It is not normal for classes to be cancelled, especially with the final exams so close. I thought they were going to announce some school event like the cultural festival, or that they were going to show a movie. But it's true that if it were just that, it wouldn't make sense to cancel classes for the entire day, Sato said. This is certainly strange, Uraraka said. But the director will probably explain to us why he called us here. I hope so, Bakugo said. Before they could continue arguing, they noticed that the teachers were entering the auditorium accompanied by several professional heroes: Mirko, Endeavor, Rukyu, Hawks, Egdeshot, Kamui Woods, Mount Lady, Fat Gum, and the members of Wild Pussycats. The Big Three and Hitoshi Shinso from Class C, surprising the students even more. Several people blinked in surprise. They're here too. What's going on? Hello, Mirio-senpai. Greeting Midoriya. Do you know why we are here? Hello, Izuku-kun. Mirio responded. Not really. I just know that the director called us here today. Us too, Midnight said. The director called all of us together and told us that he would explain more details to us when we arrived. Which is strange coming from him, Aizawa said, surprised by this. Well, we just have to wait for him to arrive, and we will know why he did this, Present Mike said to his friend. I am also curious on why he summoned us as well, Rukyu said, gesturing to the other pro heroes that aren't you, the teachers or staff. I hope it's something important and that they haven't wasted my time, Endeavor said, somewhat irritated at the idea of wasting his valuable time, much to Shoto's annoyance at his father's attitude. Shortly after this, Director Nezu entered, accompanied by All Might, Gran Torino, and Detective Tsukachi. Before anyone could say anything, the director spoke. Now I know you must have many questions about why I have called all of you here today. He paused briefly before continuing. Please take a seat so I can proceed to explain this entire situation to you. Everyone proceeded to do what the director instructed, and shortly after everyone was seated, in the front the students sat with Class A on the right and B on the left, with the Big Three and Shinso in the center between both classes, while the teachers and pro hero sat behind the students. Once everyone except Nezu, Naomasa, All Might, and Gran Torino had sat down, Nezu showed them on the auditorium screen a video from a security camera that had recorded his meeting with Felicity and the conversation they had both had. The rest of the audience is greatly surprised by this. Hey? But how is it possible that an intruder has entered the UA? Egdeshot asked in surprise. I thought they had strengthened the security system to prevent something like this. And we did. Power Loader said, equally surprised. I set up the security system myself. This should not be possible. And what is that about a deity? Bakugo asked. And what can the future show us? Uraraka said, surprised. First of all, that is the reason why I have summoned Detective Tsukachi, Nezu said, interrupting the audience. To investigate this person. And we couldn't find anything at all. Neither in databases with records of villains, nor in citizen records. There is no one with a teleportation quirk that matches her description. Not to mention that she was able to enter the UA without setting off any alarms. And after a long and exhaustive discussion with Detective Tsukachi, All Might and Gran Torino, we have decided that it was best to discuss with you first, before seeing the information she have given us, whether you agree or not with seeing this information. Both the heroes and the students looked at each other, quite confused by this whole situation, since the idea of a deity that shows the future and talks about a great disaster that will occur soon is in itself strange and disturbing. But on the other hand, they have already seen what this deity is capable of, and with the increase in villain activity that there has been lately, the idea of a great disaster is not so far-fetched either. Some of the heroes even suspect that the Security Commission Publica de Heroes has information about it that they are not sharing with them. Not for nothing did they demand that students have internships at pro-heroes agencies. Many tremble when remembering incidents such as that of the USG, the appearance of Stain, the murderer of heroes and villains who followed his ideas, the Camino incident, the attack of an extremely powerful Namu in the city of Kyushu, what happened on Nabu Island, and more recently the Deka incident. No one said anything until Endeavor finally decided to break the silence. Well, since they made us come here, I think it would be best to see it. The rest of the audience nods in agreement with the current #1 hero. Nezu puts the tape in the player, and then he, All Might, Gran Torino, and Detective Tsukachi head towards where the rest of the audience is, to sit down too and watch the information that Felicity has given them. When the video starts playing, the first thing you see is a warning that this video contains sensitive information, and that it must be handled with great care, and that several secrets will come to light. These words briefly disconcert the audience, as they did not expect such a warning, and most are confused about what secrets will come to light. While others like Endeavor, Shoto, Hawks, All Might, Midoriya, and Bakugo feel quite uncomfortable as they have the horrible feeling that they are referring to them and the secrets they hide. Please don't reveal the one for all. Gran Torino thought, worried. There is a reason why it is a secret to the world, as those who know about its existence face great danger. The next thing seen on the screen is Izuku observing the ruins of a city from the top of a building. His hero costume was dirty and tattered in many places, and, looking closely, one could even see the blood stains there as well. While his eyes had huge circles under them and lacked their usual shine, the audience is greatly surprised to see the scene they are contemplating. They can hardly believe what they are seeing. What the hell? What the hell happened there? And why are you there, Deku? Bakugo exclaimed in disbelief at what he was seeing. I have no idea, Kaken, Midoriya said, equally surprised to see himself on the screen, watching a destroyed city. But what happened there? How did that city end up like this? Takage exclaimed in surprise. Maybe an earthquake? Ida theorized. Although I had never seen one of those magnitudes. No, I don't think so, Pixie Bob said. But if it's not an earthquake, then what could cause that level of destruction? Rukiu asked. I guess we'll see, 13 said, worried about the imminent destruction. While Gran Torino and Naomasa look at each other worried, because they have an idea what could have caused such destruction. Don't tell me what that thing was. They both thought, very worried. The next thing you hear is a sudden roar, and a deafening crash that filled the air, causing Izuku to tiredly mutter, "A great villain." "Villain?" several people exclaimed, worried about this scenario. "Oh no," Oase exclaimed worriedly. "This is really bad." "But what is this disaster?" Mainta exclaimed, scared at what he is seeing in this future. The voice of a narrator is heard. "Well, you are probably wondering how we got to this." "Duh, obviously," Bakugo exclaimed. "Seriously? What the hell happened?" Kamakiri exclaimed. "We need answers," Tetsutetsu exclaimed. "Calm down," Kendo said. "They will surely give us more information later." In order to answer that question, it is important to first understand what happened before, how the foundations for the destruction were built, and the people who carried it out. "What happened before?" Kaminari asked, surprised. "People who carried it out? Who are you referring to?" Bondo asked. Some in the audience have a couple of ideas of who the narrator may be referring to. Is the League of Villains responsible for all that destruction? But how? Aizawa wondered. All right, let's get started. Audience members look at each other before returning their attention to the screen, expectant for what they will see. The audience is surprised to hear this conversation between the two, especially the fact that All for One supposedly has left the League with a great power. "Okay, this is quite worrying," Kaminari said, scared. "A great power that All for One left behind," Kirishima exclaimed in fear as he remembered his encounter with the villain during Bakugo's rescue. He still has nightmares due to the terrifying presence of All for One. Whatever it is definitely something bad, Ida said as he remembered not only his encounter with All for One, but also the destruction at the beginning. "That bastard," All Might exclaimed, enraged by whatever his nemesis was up to. "So that's what he was looking for," Naomasa said as he remembered Kurogiri's capture. "When we caught him, we saw him." "You mean?" All Might said, very worried as he remembered what Gran Torino had told him about the walking disaster they had encountered during Kurogiri's arrest. "Let's hope it's not that," Gran Torino said worriedly, although internally he knows that Gigantomachia is the power that All for One left behind. "Hey, what do they mean?" asked Mandalay, who, like the rest of the audience, wants to know what it is about. "I'm not sure if we're really right." Naomasa said that he doesn't want to worry the rest anymore either. "I guess we will have to wait and see." The rest of the audience, although they are a little bothered, decide to turn their attention to the screen in the hope of seeing more details and discovering what the villains are up to. A sign appears on the screen, indicating that what they will see next occurred on an October day. "October? That was just 3 months ago," Komori said, surprised. "It was the same month as the cultural festival," Ashido said. "So what we will see next is what the villains were doing at that time?" Gyro asked. "I guess so, Kyoka," Hagakure said. "As if it mattered," Bakugo said, annoyed at the thought of seeing the villains. "We really shouldn't care what the villains do," Kamakiri said in agreement with Bakugo, as did several other students. "That's where you're wrong." Aizawa turned to the students. "Learning about what they do, their techniques, movements and plans, could give us a big advantage against them in the future." The students nod in agreement after realizing this fact. Midoriya, on the other hand, takes out the notebook he had the foresight to bring, preparing to write down any relevant information he can learn about the villains. We then see the earth move, and then Gigantomachia emerges from the earth, before Shigaraki and the rest of the League. Gigantomachia says that he was looking for a foe's successor in reference to Shigaraki, while Shigaraki wonders if this is the power Kurogiri was talking about. The audience was greatly surprised and scared to find out about Gigantomachia. "Ah," several of the students exclaimed upon seeing Gigantomachia. "But what the hell is that?" Sato exclaimed in surprise. "A giant monster. But how is it possible that such a creature exists?" Kodai exclaimed. "Maybe it's a human with a gigantification quirk like S," Midoriya theorized. Although he probably has at least one quirk that allows him to be underground, because we already saw that he came out of the ground. And considering it's apparently the power that All for One left behind, it wouldn't be surprising if it has additional quirks or some sort of modifications. Yaoyorozu said, terrified as she remembered the Nomus factory and the villainous quirk thief. Whatever that thing is will only bring us more problems, Rukyu said. Ashido and Kirishima are surprised to see him as he looks strangely familiar, while Naomasa and Gran are shocked to recognize Gigantomachia. Even Hawks is surprised to see him, especially since he's already had the chance to see him in Gunga. Then it was him. This is the power that All for One left behind. The situation became much more dangerous now. Naomasa thought, worried. A calamity that will destroy everything, Gran said, worrying the audience greatly. When we arrested Kurogiri, we saw it, Naomasa said, while the rest of the audience looks at him scared. That giant destroyed a mountain without even trying too hard. Oh no, this is really bad, Ragdoll said worriedly. Do you remember the scene at the beginning? The destroyed city. Was that the thing that caused that destruction? Midnight asked, worried. The others also got worried by this. Oh shit. This is really a disaster, Mount Lady said. Gigantomachia proceeds to attack the League, much to the surprise of Shigaraki and the rest of the League. Eh? But why is it attacking them? Nejire asked in both surprise and confusion. Yeah, you're right. Isn't he supposed to work with the League? All for One left it for them, Asui said, just as confused. But on the other hand, if he eliminates them, it really wouldn't be such a bad thing, Mirko said. At least, then we would have one less thing to worry about, right? Gigantomachia. Why All for One? This cannot be. Why, Master? We see Gigantomachia crying, while complaining that Shigaraki is weak. So the reason why he acts like this is because Shigaraki is weak? Kiwaro exclaimed in surprise. The person next to him snorted. Hearing the League of Villains boss called weak by another villain was too funny to not laugh. The irony. So it seems, Takoyami said, also surprised. Weak? Shigaraki? Minta screamed, standing on his chair, flailing his arms. This was absurd. How can anyone call that guy weak? Well, when compared to All for One, he certainly is, young Minta, All Might said. And yet, he is as slippery as that vermin, Gran said, annoyed. An unknown voice is heard commenting that he sees Shigaraki in trouble. The audience is surprised once again to hear this new voice that they are pretty sure does not belong to any member of the League. And for some, that voice seems eerily familiar. I could bet I've heard that voice before. But where? Midoriya thought uneasily at the thought. We suspected that the League had a benefactor. Could it be this person, whoever it is? Hawks wondered. Next we see the radio that Gigantomachia had, and Shigaraki refers to him as a doctor. A doctor? Ida asked. But who is it? He's probably an ally of All for One, All Might said, narrowing his eyes. Even though we have arrested him, he still has subordinates on the loose. The League is just some of his subordinates. Some others must still be hiding there. If that is true, then we should investigate this doctor as soon as possible, Endeavor said, to which the rest of the heroes nod in agreement, agreeing that finding out everything possible about this doctor is essential. Garaki, are you okay? Shigaraki. Yes, although it may be in pieces in a second. Gigantomachia. No, I cannot accept it. Please eliminate it, so we will have one less problem, Mirko said. Mirko, you shouldn't say that in front of the younger students. Think about the example you are giving them, Rukyu reprimanded. Although she understands Mirko's feelings, she doesn't want the students to adopt this mentality. Garaki. It's Gigantomachia. He served All for One as a bodyguard. The audience is shocked to hear this. The bodyguard of All for One? Several people exclaimed in surprise. But if that's true, why didn't we know until now about the existence of that thing? Tiger asked, surprised. Yeah, how does a colossus like that go unnoticed? Hanuki asked. Because even though I hate to admit it, All for One is no fool, Gran Torino said, making the rest of the audience pay attention to him. That bastard must have kept it hidden somehow, waiting for the perfect moment to bring it out into the light. In addition, the commission decided not to make its existence public so as not to cause panic, Naomasa said. Until now, there were only a handful of people who knew of its existence. Well, it makes sense that the commission wouldn't inform the public of the existence of that thing. But at least we heroes should have been informed of this, Vlad said, annoyed, as did the rest of the heroes in the audience. How are we supposed to face that thing if they didn't even inform us that it existed? Mount Lady exclaimed. The commission wanted to make sure they gathered enough information before informing the heroes, Hawks explained. Oh, that makes sense. But they still could have informed us of the existence of that thing, Pixie Bob said. Garaki. He has extraordinary stamina and can use several quirks even without modifications. The audience is once again surprised to hear this. So it seems like he does have several quirks, Kendo said, worried about this. And he can also use them without any type of modification, Yaoyorozu said. Fuck, Mirko and Bakugo exclaimed in unison. This is definitely bad, Rukiyu said, very worried. And what is resistance? What do you mean by that? Kaminari asked. It's probably a quirk, Midoriya said, thoughtful. Maybe he has a quirk that increases his resistance and allows him to receive additional quirks. He theorizes, although he hasn't written it down in his notebook yet because it hasn't been confirmed. The rest of the audience gives it some thought and nods in agreement with this theory. Garaki. All for One hit it when he anticipated his defeat against All Might. It's thorough. He did it several years after adopting you. So he went to Kamino with the intention of losing? Kirishima exclaimed. But why? Above all, if we take into account that he is the pillar of the League and the boss of all this, his arrest would mean that the League would be weakened enormously, Ida said. That's true, but I think I actually plan things by looking at the bigger picture, Nezu said thoughtfully, making everyone pay attention to him. The fact that he hid Machia and prepared Shigaraki indicates to us that he planned at least a large part of all this, like a chain reaction. Not to mention that the Kamino incident and All Might's retirement also weakened the heroes, Gran Trino said, annoyed, while All Might clenches his fists in anger as he remembers his fight with All for One on Kamino. And in a way, losing his mentor also forced Shigaraki to grow, Aizawa said. As much as I hate to admit it, he's grown quite a bit since Kamino. It's really hard to believe that Shigaraki is the same tantrum-throwing punk who attacked the Yasti. And he's not the only one, Hawk said, narrowing his eyes. Every member of the League has grown since then. So those were their motivations, to weaken the Hero Society and force the League to grow, Midoriya said thoughtfully. If that was his plan, I must admit, as much as I hate it, that he achieved it, Ragdoll said, furious with the villain. Although it was a very risky bet, it apparently had some success, Tiger said. Though we still have to see how much success it has had, Endeavor said, remembering the warning he received from Hawks. According to Hawks, they have 100,000 villains in their ranks. But how? Are they subordinates of All for One or what? Garaki. He did it to ensure that his dream would persevere, even if something happened to him. That damn bastard. All Might cursed furiously. He obviously planned all of this, Naomasa said, annoyed. Even if he fell, he prepared a successor to continue with his plans, Gran Torino said furiously when he saw that the one chosen for that was the grandson of his dear friend Nana. Dabi prepares to attack Machia. Well, it doesn't seem like an endearing gift to me. Honestly, that villain, he's not wrong, That thing is not much of a gift, Takage said. No matter how strong that thing is, if you can't control it, it won't do you any good. Bondo said. That they don't control it is the best for us, Mirko said. Unfortunately, they managed to control it. Hawks thought worriedly. It seems that we will see here how they ended up taming him. Garaki, that's Dabi. You have good eyes. Gigantomachia is so loyal that he is disappointed we see Makia running while crying. By the power difference between Shigaraki and his former master. Good eyes? That villain just stated the obvious, Fukadashi said. Why do I have a feeling there is something else there? Hawks thought, frustrated at knowing so little. Of all the league members, the only ones I couldn't find anything about are Shigaraki and Dabi. I understand Shigaraki because he had All for One. But Dabi, does he also have some connection with All for One? But if that's the case, why didn't he participate in the attack on the USG? Who are you really, Dabi? But on the other hand, it's disturbing to see that thing cry, Suntory said, somewhat uncomfortable seeing him. Not to mention his loyalty to All for One, Kodai said. Yes, that too, Suntory said. Dabi. And do you have to make an effort to like him? He fires a blast of fire at Gigantomachia, only to be surprised to see that his attack did not cause any damage to Gigantomachia. Himiko Toga. Scared you didn't do anything to him, Dabi. The audience is shocked and horrified to see this. What? That attack did absolutely nothing to him, Yanagi exclaimed in surprise. And those flames are no small thing, Shoji said, remembering when Dabi attacked him at the camp. They look extremely hot, Ojiro said. They are, Shoto said. The fact that they are blue is already proof of that. Eh? What do you mean by that? Ashido asked, who does not understand why the color of the flames is indicative of power. Blue flames means that they are hotter than normal flames, Endeavor said, narrowing his eyes. Even I have a hard time reaching temperatures that high, and that guy doesn't seem to have any problem reaching that level. Whoa, it's that difficult? Hagakure asked in surprise. Quite a bit. I have never managed to reach such a high temperature, Shoto said, surprising the rest of the students. But that's because I neglected my left side for years. If I had trained more sooner, maybe I could. But hey, I'll make it one day. So, that means that Guy has a very strong quirk, Uraraka said worriedly. And not only that. If he manages to have blue flames, that means he must have great control over his quirk. He probably has been training for a long time, Nezu said thoughtfully. One way or the other, Bakugo said. It doesn't matter how strong Frankenstein is. He will fall like all villains. Makia continues moving forward, but is calmed by hearing a recording of a foe's voice and curls up next to the radio. Garaki. It's a recording of All for One's voice. He calmed down, right? The audience is greatly surprised to see that. That voice, Yaoyorozu said, trembling when she heard it. That's, Gyro said nervously. All for One. All Might growled upon hearing his nemesis's voice. Hey, did he calm down just with that? Komori exclaimed in surprise. It's really incredible that he calmed down just by listening to it, Shota said surprised. But on the other hand, we could use that to contain Makia, Shinso said thoughtfully. It is not a bad idea, Aizawa said, proud of his student. Shigaraki. I don't need it. He removes his hand from his face. Garaki. No. Do you still think you can get everything you want? You spent a lot of time with Kurogiri. Open your eyes. Shigaraki. You are very cold, Doctor. Garaki. Wait a second. Let's see. Because I have a feeling that something bad is going to happen? Gyro asked. Because something bad is sure to happen, Kendo said. Yes, definitely, Shishida said. The rest of the league wonders what is happening. when suddenly a black substance begins to come out of everyone's mouths that completely surrounds them, causing the members of the League to be transported to Garaki's laboratory. The audience is greatly surprised to see this. "Eh? What the hell?" Kaminari exclaimed in surprise. "That's the teleportation quirk that All for One used on Kamino," All Might exclaimed, surprised and furious. "If it weren't for that, we would have been able to catch the League on Kamino," Naomasa said, frustrated by the fact that the League had run away that day. And now that Doctor just used it to take the League somewhere else, so he must have access to that quirk too, Yaoyorozu said thoughtfully. "Although how? Does this doctor have a similar quirk?" "That is a good observation, young Yaoyorozu." Nezu congratulated her. "That is a very good question that I hope we get answered." "That quirk," Endeavor said, narrowing his eyes. "It's also the same one Dabi used to escape in Kyushu. So that means that the person Yujiko spoke to must be the doctor, and he is working with the League," Hawks said, analyzing the situation. "It is very likely so," Gran Torino said. "If so, that would confirm the link between the two and the fact that they are working together." Naomasa said, worried about this fact. Shigaraki wonders where they are. The laboratory is a very dark place with some capsules that contain Nomus as the only source of lighting, giving the place a more gloomy touch. You can see several of the containers with the Nomus inside. "Ah," several people in the audience exclaimed, scared when they saw the laboratory. "What a dismal place," Hagakure exclaimed. "It's really horrible, but I guess it's appropriate for a villain," Ashido said, displeased. "Actually, if it weren't for the Nomus, it would be a nice place," Takoyami said. "Yes, it is very dark. It really looks very nice," Kiworo said in agreement, much to the chagrin of the rest of the audience. "And of course, you too would find it enjoyable," Jiro said. Dabi comments that these Nomus are different from the previous ones. Garaki congratulates him for realizing this fact and once again praises his good eyesight. We also see Garaki sitting in a chair in front of some computers that have various graphs, statistics among other data. The little that can be seen of the doctor is his glasses, that he is bald and stocky. "Hey? Are these Nomus different from the rest? And how could that villain know?" Ashido asked in surprise. "Well, although it is difficult to notice, if you look at them carefully you do see some differences. These look more like the one that attacked Kyushu than the ones we had seen in the Hasu and Kamino incidents," Yaoyorozu said, carefully observing the Nomus. "Yes, it's true," Nezu said, also observing the Nomus. "And if these look like the one in Kyushu, they are probably high-ends too." The audience is greatly frightened at the thought of this possibility. "Fuck," Ojiro exclaimed, worried. "That Namu was extraordinarily powerful, and the idea that they are doing more. And you saying that is certainly a disturbing idea, Ribbit," Asui said worriedly as she remembered Endeavor's fight with Hood. "That man," Midoriya said, surprised to see him. "He still doesn't know why, but he's sure he's seen him somewhere before. Garaki. They are high-end supernomas that come even closer to perfection." "Well, this confirms it," Tiger said worriedly. "Those Nomas are like the one that attacked Kyushu. This is certainly worrying," Egdeshot said worriedly. "We will have to find some way to neutralize them before they release them. Hopefully we can find something in this that can help us with that," Fat Gum said. "Shigaraki, I was looking for you to ask you a favor. I want you to duplicate one thing." The audience is shocked to hear this. "Duplicate something? But what?" Kaibara asked. "Whatever it is, it's not good," Kendo said worriedly. "Damn," Bakugo said, annoyed. "This is getting worse and worse." "Garaki. Your hair grew, Shigaraki. How is your family?" This last surprises Shigaraki, who answers that his family is fine. "Shigaraki's family? What do you mean by that?" Ectoplasm asked. "This is new." Hawks said, surprised. I have investigated Shigaraki, and I have not been able to find absolutely anything about him or his family. Nana did a very good job hiding her son. Gran thought, frustrated. And since I promised Nana not to look for him, we didn't even know he had a grandson until that day on Camino. And although we have tried to find out what happened to them, we still have not been able to obtain anything. Midoriya, on the other hand, is strangely curious about this, as he wishes he could understand Shigaraki better. Garaki. I don't want to reveal my location, so I teleported you here. And of course, that wretch wouldn't risk exposing himself. Aizawa said, annoyed. That bastard is smart, and he's making sure not to leave traces. It's not going to be easy to get to him. Present Mike said. Midnight is surprised to see her friend's attitude towards the doctor, since they are really upset with him, and not like they would be with any random villain, but as if they had something personal against him. But it will fall sooner or later. Vlad said, sure that they will be able to arrest him. Garaki. Except Shigaraki, the rest don't know me. Like Gigantomachia, I am an all-for-one assistant. Daruma Yujiko. I just made up the name. Well, this confirms it. This man is an assistant of All-for-One, and is most likely the one who helped him recover. The Naomasa said. If this man is a doctor and has access to material of this type, it is not surprising that he managed to survive. All Might said, furious with his nemesis and this ally of his. That damn bastard, I should have made sure he was really dead, he exclaimed angrily, causing him to adopt his muscular form for a few seconds. Unfortunately, we cannot change the past, and we could not predict that that damned bastard had not only an ally, but secondary plans. Gran said, equally annoyed. And this also confirms to us that the name Dabi gave in Kyushu is false. Hawk said. This doctor is really cautious if he didn't give his real name even to the League members. It doesn't matter how cautious that wretch is. Eventually the heroes will find him, and he will go to prison. Bakugo exclaimed, furious with the villain. Garaki. I brought you here because I made a promise to All-for-One. Everything I have, I gave to the great All-for-One. And on top of that, he had to torture us with a pathetic villain speech. Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed. Yes, really, what's wrong with him? Do all villains follow some kind of cliché or what? Kirishima wondered between laughs. You shouldn't laugh, young Kirishima. This is something really serious. All Might said. Yes, this guy is not only a fan of All-for-One, but he is someone who is totally committed to it. Gran said worriedly. And that makes it much more dangerous. I see, I'm sorry. Kirishima apologized. Garaki. Until now, you only kept the leftovers. It's not that I hate you. I do it for myself. I want to make sure I can deliver everything to you. You still haven't achieved anything. He still haven't achieved anything? Minta exclaimed. But what world does this guy live in? Maybe he's a hermit who lives in isolation and hasn't heard the news, because Shigaraki and his league have a pretty extensive record. Shota said. And you say it. There are the Usti incident, the attack on the camp, the kidnapping of a student, the attack on a police convoy that ended with the death of a pro-hero, among several other crimes. And those are just the ones they committed as a group. Several of its members also committed several other crimes individually, Ida exclaimed, annoyed with the villains. Yes, but compared to All-for-One's records, and what this man has, that's nothing in comparison. All Might said, narrowing his eyes. He's probably waiting for Shigaraki to prove himself a worthy successor, so he can help him. The rest of the audience becomes extremely uneasy thinking about this, and what Shigaraki must do to be a foe's worthy successor. Garaki. That he would show me a waste of society like you, Tamura Shigaraki. Absolutely no good, Minta exclaimed, scared. A flashback of a hand approaching the screen is seen, and a man's voice is heard shouting, Stop Tenko. The audience is greatly surprised to see this. Eh? Several people exclaim, confused. What? What was that? Fukudashi claimed, surprised. Could it be Shigaraki's memories? Midoriya asked with interest. All Might and Gran Torino, for their part, observe the scene surprised, since they know that Shigaraki's real name is Tenko, and wonder what happened to him to end up the way he did. Back in the present, Shigaraki says that he remembers almost nothing before meeting Garaki and All for One, to which Garaki admits that he knows. The audience is once again surprised to hear this. So Shigaraki seems to be suffering from some kind of amnesia. Nezu said. This is certainly interesting. It's possibly some kind of dissociative amnesia, Recovery Girl said thoughtfully. Hey? What's that? Kaminari asked. Dissociative amnesia occurs when the brain blocks some memories. These can be memories about yourself, events, and people in your life. This may occur as a form of protection of the brain against traumatic events. The audience is greatly surprised to hear this. He can't remember almost anything before meeting them. All Might said, surprised. But what has happened in his life? If what Recovery Girl says is true, then All Might can't finish what he was going to say. It's possible that something happened before All for One found Shigaraki. Something so traumatic that his mind has forgotten it. Recovery Girl said with a gloomy expression. Oh my God, Shosaki exclaimed. The rest of the audience is surprised by this revelation, and the vast majority do not know exactly how to feel about this, because Shigaraki is a villain. But some also see it from another perspective. All Might and Gran Torino feel great pain and sorrow for what happened to the grandson of their mentor and friend, to end the way it did. Midoriya, for his part, feels great curiosity and pain. This last emotion briefly disconcerts him since he does not know where this feeling comes from. Shigaraki. Looking at one of his hands when I put them on, anger wells up inside me. I've been thinking about it for a while. Since that day. So that means those hands he uses have some connection to whatever happened to him? Sato asked. So it seems, Kaibara said. Wait, don't you think these are our real hands? Uraraka asked, disgusted and horrified at the thought. Yuwa, what a disgusting idea. Hagikure said, disgusted. Although it might be possible. Asui said thoughtfully, while the rest of the audience looks at her. If I remember correctly, during the Uschi incident, Shigaraki called one of his hands father. The rest of the audience is horrified upon realizing this fact. We see another flashback of Shigaraki as a child sitting alone in a garbage can. The audience is shocked to see this scene. A young Shigaraki alone in a garbage dump. All Might and Gran Torino once again feel great pain and regret upon seeing this scene. Midoriya, on the other hand, feels an overwhelming sadness that he can't understand where it comes from. All for one. Nobody helped you, huh? Shigaraki looks up to see who is talking to him. We see All for One standing in front of the boy. It must have been hard. Shigaraki looks surprised at the man in front of him, who calls him Tenko Shimura. So this is how they met. All for One and Shigaraki. Kodai said. It seems, Shiozaki said. I must admit that I feel a little bad for Shigaraki. He must have had a very hard life to end up like this. Uraraka said, moved. I understand what you're saying, but don't forget that he will kill you without hesitation if he has the chance. Ribbit. Asui said, shaking as he remembered how she almost died at the hands of Shigaraki during the Uschi incident, and how she only survived thanks to Aizawa-sensei's quirk. I know too. Just because I can empathize a little with him doesn't mean I'm going to hesitate if I fight him. Uraraka said with determination. So Shigaraki's real name is Tenko Shimura. Hawk said thoughtfully, making a mental note to look into it once he finishes watching this, as does Midoriya, who writes it down in his notebook on the page he has about Shigaraki. Yeah, All Might said with a look of pain and regret on his face. All for One told me this during our fight on Kamino. This greatly impacts the audience. You mean you've known that for months, and you haven't told anyone? Endeavor asked, annoyed. That information could have been very useful to us. Yes, I have revealed it. Detective Tsukachi and Gran Torino know this, and have been investigating him and his past. All Might said. Yes, although so far we have not been successful. Naomasa said, frustrated by this fact. Besides, it's not easy for me. All Might said, saddened. Shigaraki is the grandson of my former teacher, Nana Shimura. The audience is greatly surprised to hear this. W what? Several exclaim in a state of total shock. B. But how is that possible? Ida asked, surprised. When I met her, my mentor had a husband and a son. He began to explain All Might to the surprised audience. But her husband died during an attack by a villain sent by All for One. And to protect her son, she decided to give him up for adoption and alter any records that existed about them, to protect him from All for One so he could live a normal life. My mentor believed that with this her son would be safe and asked me and Gran Torino not to look for him or try to contact him in any way. All Might conclude with a look of deep sadness and regret. And that's what we did. Gran Torino also said, extremely sad. We respected her wish, until All for One told Yagi Shigaraki's true identity. After that we were trying to find out what happened to Nana's family, but without success. Nana really did a good job when she modified the records. But somehow All for One found out about Tenko, and trained him to become his successor. All Might said, furious and saddened by this. Most likely as a mockery of both my mentor and me. That's horrible, Komori exclaimed. The grandson of a heroine becoming a villain. What an ironic twist of fate. Takoyami said. All for One. You must have been scared. It must have been hard. You ran in search of a hand to save you. All for One hugs young Shigaraki, who cries, moved by the gesture. It's terrible. As if you cared, you damn bastard, Bakugo exclaimed furiously. You only trained Shigaraki to make fun of me and my mentor. All Might exclaimed, furious with his nemesis. All for One. Some hero will help him. Everyone ignored you thinking something like that. Who made the world like this? Shigaraki continues, crying, you're safe now. I'm here. What a fucking bastard. He literally manipulated everything, Kodai exclaimed, annoyed. That's what that bastard does. Gran Torino said, annoyed. And Shigaraki is not the only one. He has manipulated too many people. And despite having been arrested, he continues to do so today. Pixie Bomb said. Back in the present, Shigaraki continues, looking at one of his hands. Shigaraki. My memory begins when the teacher hugged me. Until then, it was empty. In another flashback, a young Shigaraki, wearing a pair of gloves, enters a room. All for One. I know it's small, but this will be your room. And I will be your teacher. So that's how it started. Yaoyorozu said thoughtfully. After he found him, he started training him to be his successor. So it seems, Ribbit. Asui said sadly. I really feel bad for Shigaraki. Growing up with a guy like All for One. Uraraka said, saddened, once bad for Shigaraki. Yeah, Midoriya said. I know what you mean. Young Shigaraki, sensei? What will you teach me? To be a villain, Kuibara said. That damned bastard. Gran Torino said, furious at what All for One had done to his dear friend's grandson. All for One. Doctor. Goraki. Yes. Shigaraki is surprised to see the doctor enter, carrying a cart with several hands. All for One. These are the remains of your family. The audience is horrified and disgusted upon hearing this, several even having to suppress the urge to vomit. This confirms it. Shigaraki's hands do belong to real people. Hawks said, narrowing his eyes. They are your family members. Uraraka said, stopping herself from vomiting. So that means, All Might said, horrified, that they are dead. Gran Torino said, saddened by the fate of his friend's relatives, like the rest of the audience. All for one. Your quirk is a mutation. You activated an unknown quirk and killed your family. This greatly disturbs young Shigaraki, who remembers some fragments of Shigaraki's past that he cries and vomits when remembering it. Shigaraki. I only remembered single images and an unknown rage that made me want to vomit. The audience is shocked and horrified to hear that Shigaraki killed his family with his quirk when it first activated. An unknown quirk? But what is that? Kaminari asked, confused. Seriously, Kam? Gyro asked, surprised. They just revealed something like that to us, and you asked that. I really don't know what it is. Kaminari said, to the surprise of the audience. Some giggle, while others simply sigh at Kaminari's ignorance. Well, yes, it is unusual. There are times when it happens. Nezu explained. An unknown quirk is when a child obtains a quirk that has no history in their family, as is the case with Eri. Midoriya said. Her rewind is a quirk that had no relation to the rest of her family. And when we met her, she was in the hands of Overhaul, in the same way as Shigaraki was with All for One. If we hadn't saved her that day, she asked me if she would have ended up like Shigaraki. Midoriya was immensely worried when he noticed this similarity between Eri and Shigaraki. And since he was able to rescue Eri, no one except Shigaraki. And that is likely to have been the case. Gran Torino said. Nana's quirk was float, which allowed her to levitate, and her son, if I remember correctly, had a similar quirk. But that means, Hagakure said, scared, that Shigaraki killed his entire family as a child. Midnight said, horrified by this fact. Although it was possibly an accident. Mirio said. Just like what happened with Eri, who accidentally killed her father with her quirk. That perhaps, but not his subsequent actions. Aizawa said. Garaki. We will modify it. All for one. No. So his original idea was to modify it? Shoji asked, surprised. At least from that doctor, it seems that way. Yayurazu said. But of course that bastard had other plans. All Might said, furious with his nemesis. I don't know if that's better or worse. Ashido said. Turn him into some kind of Namu, or raise him to be his successor. Does raccoon eyes matter? Both are equally bad. Bakugo said. The young Shigaraki, still crying, approaches the hands. All for One says that even if he doesn't remember anything, the emotions are still recorded in him. Well, that's true. Recovery Girl said. People who suffer from dissociative amnesia, although they cannot remember, still have those memories in their subconscious. So that explains a lot. Midoriya said, looking at Shigaraki. All for One. What I want to teach you is where to direct that anger, those emotions. In other words, educate him to be a villain. Vlad said, annoyed. Of course he would do something like that. Gran Torino said furiously. The crying young Shigaraki grabs his hands, while his present self speaks. Shigaraki. When I put them on, something very curious happens. My stomach turns and I feel nauseous. But at the same time, they give me some peace. The audience is disgusted by Shigaraki's words. That is certainly disgusting, Hagakure exclaimed. He's talking about corpses. Ashido said, displeased. And they are those of their relatives. Kendo said, displeased. We see the rest of the league members as Shigaraki continues talking. Shigaraki. I only remember single images, but in my heart, there is a leaden weight that emits anger incessantly. I will never be satisfied. A flashback is seen of All Might on Kamino and of Overhaul. Although the Society of Heroes falls or rules the world of shadows, this lead will never disappear. I hate absolutely everything. Everything irritates me. Well, I will destroy everything. You will be able to see the most beautiful horizon in the world. So help me, Doctor. I'll show you heaven and hell. The audience is shocked and horrified once again upon hearing Shigaraki's words. Oh, okay, those are words worthy of a disturbed mind, Komori said, scared. All for One raised him to be a villain and his successor. Did you expect anything else? Yaoyorozu asked. As if we were going to allow you something like that, Bakugo exclaimed furiously. We will defeat you and your group of losers. That's how you speak, Bakubro, Kirishima exclaimed, encouraging his friend. Garaki laughs, while commenting that although Tamura speaks like a child, he recognizes that he is very serious and agrees to help him since villains are people who make the most absurd things come true. No, Bakugo exclaimed. The villains are simply a group of losers who will end up getting beat up by the heroes. But on the other hand, this man is not wrong when he says that Shigaraki is serious. Ribbit, Asui said, worried. As absurd as it may be, Shigaraki and the League are a serious threat, Aizawa said worriedly. And on top of that, this man is supporting them, Hawk said. They are not enemies that should be underestimated. Himiko, somewhat surprised by Shigaraki's words, asks him if he will also destroy the things she likes. To which Shigaraki replies that his allies' wishes are something else, and that they should be able to do and live the way they want. Himiko is happy hearing this. Uraraka and Asui are a little surprised to see Himiko's reaction, as is the rest of the audience. That's what the crazy woman is really worried about? Bakugo exclaims. Let them destroy your things. Of course a villain would think that way, Mirko said, looking at Himiko with disgust. Not to mention that girl is pretty crazy, Ribbit, Asui said, remembering her meeting with Himiko at the camp. But it seems Shigaraki is willing to let his allies do whatever they want, Midoriya said, watching this. He seems to care about them. So it seems, Uraraka said, somewhat surprised by this. Garaki says that he was going to help them from the beginning, and that he has a certain power prepared for him. But before giving it to him, he must subdue Gigantomachia, to prove that he is the worthy successor of All for One. The audience is shocked to see this. So that's how he got the doctor's support, Hawk said. Wait, so this means Kodai can't finish what he was going to say. That in the present Shigaraki has already been able to tame that beast, and that doctor is supporting him, Ragdoll said, extremely concerned about this fact. Fuck, Mirko exclaimed, worried. This is really bad. We should have prioritized capturing Shigaraki and the League after the Camino incident, Naomasa said, frustrated. But we believed that without All for One they would be weaker, and we didn't pay enough attention to them until after they attacked that police convoy. A mistake that will cost us dearly. Don't worry, we'll catch them, All Might said, convinced of this fact. It's just a matter of time. Shigaraki accepts this, while commenting that it was a very long tutorial. Eh? Is that all you have to say? Siro exclaimed, surprised. Do you think life is a stupid video game? Ida exclaimed in surprise. So it seems, Shoto said, remembering the Asji incident, and how Shigaraki started kicking and shouting, "Game over." Well, at least he saved us a pathetic villain monologue, Mirko said. Dabi tells him that he will not help him in the task of subduing Machia, and Toga proceeds to mock him that he is upset because his attack did not affect him. But he tells her to shut up, before explaining that he was going to invest time in a contact that he had recently made, and that he believed would be of great use to them. Those two, Ashido said, looking at Toga and Dabi. It almost seems like brothers getting upset about things. Although on the other hand, what he said is worrying, Cementos said. Yeah, Fat Gum said thoughtfully. He said he recently made a contact that could be very useful to them. That could be dangerous for us. Another thing we should investigate, Endeavor said, staring at Dabi, while Hawk swallowed because he knew that Dabi was most likely referring to him. Shigaraki authorizes Dabi to go ahead with his plan, and Garaki comments enthusiastically that he can help him try the high ends and that Dabi and the Nomas share tastes and aesthetics, so they can relate easily, then grabs a small Namu. Yuke! Takage exclaims in disgust. What a disgusting thing. And on top of that guy grabs him like he was a stuffed animal. Hagakure said displeased. Try the high end? Snipe said thoughtfully. So the Kyushu incident was that? A test? So it seems, Egdeshot said. And if that was proof, all the more reason we should never allow them to use those monsters. We must find some way to neutralize them. Nezu said worried. I hope these tapes have something that can help us with that. Yeah, I remember Dabi mentioning that when I confronted him. Hawks thought, remembering the talk he had with Dabi after the Kyushu incident. Although now that doctor mentions it, I wonder if Dabi is some kind of Namu. Although he is very different from all the ones I have seen, he could be a Namu like Kurogiri. That would also explain why I could never find anything about him. Anyway, I'll investigate it. Before the League returns to where they were before, Goraki gives them a device so they can communicate with him. He later orders the little Namu-Jan to return them to Gigantomachia. The League, except for Dabi, returns to where Machia is, while Shigaraki proudly proclaims that his future king has returned. The audience is concerned to see how the events unfolded, and they are still digesting the information they have just seen. Nobody says anything, and then the next tape begins. The audience is shocked to see this. This is after the Kyushu incident. Kamui Wood said, narrowing his eyes. Once Endeavor managed to defeat that monster, Dabi approached to retrieve it. So it seems, Mount Lady said. And this also happened after what we saw earlier. The Kyushu incident happened in November, so yes, Ragdoll said. This must have been when Dabi was helping the doctor, and the rest of the League was with Machia. That would also explain why they practically disappeared after the attack on the police convoy, and why Dabi was alone on that occasion. There have only been 2 confirmed appearances of them since the attack on the convoy, and one was this appearance of Dabi. Well, we already know what they were doing at that time. Hawks thought. That must be part of the reason why he didn't want to introduce me to the rest. They were busy with Machia, and Dabi obviously wasn't going to tell me that. Plus, he still didn't trust me back then. Although something that catches my attention is the way he acts. Vlad said, looking at Dabi suspiciously. He is incredibly calm for the situation he is in, and the way he addresses the number 1 hero. That was really a very bold move on his part, Aizawa said, remembering seeing it on television with his students. He is probably a villain with a big ego and self-confidence, who believes he is in total control of everything. Endeavor said, annoyed when remembering his meeting with Dabi. Although on the other hand, he feels a strange uneasiness, just like Shoto. Next we see Dabi create a barrier of fire surrounding Endeavor and Hawks. Endeavor recognizes him as the villain who killed Snatch despite not being able to see him properly due to his injuries, while Dabi has no memory of Snatch. Oh right, that bastard was Snatch's killer, Egdeshot said, annoyed. And he doesn't even remember it, Tiger said, also annoyed with the villain. Although on the other hand, Dabi is suspected of several murders, mostly of gang members and petty criminals, so he probably doesn't remember them all, Kamui Wood said. Although it's strange that he doesn't remember it considering he's one of Stain's followers. For him to kill a hero should be a source of pride, Ragdoll said. That damn, Ida muttered, annoyed with Stain and his followers, to the surprise of the rest of the students of class, when they saw Ida curse. Dabi, forget that and let's talk, since we have the chance. Okay, this is strange, Asui said, surprised when she heard Dabi. Wants to talk? Is he seriously? Suntory exclaimed in surprise. About what? It's probably some stupid villain monologue, Bakugo said, annoyed. Why do I have a feeling there was something else there? Hawks thought. confused about Dabi's motives, especially after remembering the conversation they had after the Kyushu incident. Endeavor tries to stand up, but is unable to do so due to his injuries. Hawks tells him to rest, and that he will take care of the situation. Although he worries about the state of his wings, he hopes to buy some time. That's actually worrying, sensei. Takoyami said, worried when he saw this, especially when remembering the talk he had with his mentor when he revealed fire as his greatest weakness, especially after a battle like that. Uraraka said after remembering what the Kyushu incident was like. It was really good that I was able to arrive on time. Mirko said, although she is still upset by the fact that Dabi was able to escape. Rukyu, seeing this, placed a hand on her shoulder to comfort her. Yeah, Endeavor said, to the surprise of some in the audience. You really saved us. That was strange. Shoto thought as he saw his father give something resembling genuine gratitude. In the common room of the class dormitories, we see the students of Class A and Aizawa who are watching the news and recognize Dabi as a villainous member of the League. Everyone is quite worried about this fact. And Aizawa wonders why Dabi would risk so much by exposing himself like that. The students of class are surprised to see themselves on the screen. Oh yeah, I definitely remember that moment, Shiro said. We were really worried when Dabi showed up. Despite everything, I don't want to see him die. Shoto thought. I haven't forgiven him, but I don't want him to die either. Shoto remembers his meeting with Dabi at summer camp, and how Dabi mocked him after failing to rescue Bakugo by calling him by his full name. Shoto, you didn't tell me that, Endeavor exclaimed, suddenly worried upon seeing this. I told the police. I didn't have to tell you too. Shoto said, annoyed with his father. And stop acting like that toward me. Although on the other hand, this is serious, Aizawa said worriedly. This interest that Dabi seems to have in you is really worrying. The rest of the audience nods in agreement, also concerned about this strange interest Dabi has in the Todorokis. Dabi, for his part, comments that he only came for the Nomu, and that he couldn't win against the two best heroes when they are injured, before proceeding to attack them. The audience is scared when they see this, especially what would have happened if Mirko had not appeared on time. Hawks and Endeavor watched him before Mirko appears, kicking so hard that it breaks the pavement, stopping Dabi's attack. Thank goodness, you were able to arrive in time, Rumi, Rukyu said. I really don't even want to imagine what would have happened if you hadn't arrived. You really saved us, Hawks said with a smile. Yeah, Endeavor said. I really appreciate it. This is already surprising. He said thank you twice. Shoto thought, surprised. He's progressing. Good. Even so, that bastard was able to escape. Mirko said, still frustrated by that fact. Hey, you managed to save Hawks and the number one hero. That was already pretty good. Najire encouraged her. And we had no way back then of knowing that the League still had that teleportation quirk, so we couldn't have prevented it. Yaoyorozu said. We'll get him and the rest of the League another time, Tsuburaba said. But still, Mirko said. Mirko, I came jumping when I saw this. You're from the League, right? I will crush you. Dabi. Just now that the best was coming. He really seems disappointed. Takage said. Dabi. Yujiko. The black mud surrounds him to everyone's surprise. And there he is, that bastard escaping. Mirko said, annoyed. That was bad, but at least it couldn't cause any more damage. Yanagi said. Dabi. We'll see you, Mr. Number 1. We will talk another time. Until then, hang in there. Don't die, Inji Todoroki. Mirko, you can talk now. He kicks him, but Dabi has already disappeared. Isn't it the same as on Kamino? Okay, this is weird and worrying. Ashido said, uncomfortable seeing Dabi's attitude. And especially seeing his attitude earlier at camp with Todoroki. Hagakure said, Midoriya, for his part, writes everything down in his notebook. There's definitely something there, Aizawa said worriedly. This interest he has in you is not normal. Why would he be so interested in you? The rest of the audience also wonders why Dabi was so interested in the Todoroki family. Maybe he just has an interest in a high-level hero. Being an admirer of Stain, it would make sense for it to be like that. Mandalay said thoughtfully. Or maybe he wants to prove something. Hawks said thoughtfully. I really feel like there is something there that I can't understand. But the way he said it, he seemed to want something more than just the death of the number one hero. Vlad said thoughtfully. He explicitly said don't die and called number one by his real name. Although that is public information, it is really strange that a villain would refer to a hero like that. That could indicate that whatever he has against Endeavor could be something personal. Nezu said thoughtfully, worrying the audience about the fact that a dangerous criminal is targeting the Todorokis. Especially considering that he has done it twice. There's no way that's a coincidence. There's definitely something there. It is not only with me, but also with my son. It is certainly worrying, and I will have to take action on the matter. Endeavor thought seriously. I don't know who you are or what you want, Dabi, nor am I interested in that. But I will defeat you the next time I see you. I won't let you mess with my family too. So he hates my father too, just like him. Shoto thought, remembering his meeting with Inisa at the provisional license exams and how he hated him because of his father and his harsh and distant attitude towards him at the beginning. Have we met him before? And he hates us for something we did to him. Hawks. At least it's resolved now. Endeavor. No. This is just the beginning. Unfortunately, you were right. Ragdoll said. From what we're seeing, the villains are definitely up to something big. Although I would say it actually started earlier. But yeah, Egdeshot said. We see the reactions to the fight of All Might, Shoto, and his brothers, all of them scared. Endeavor is moved to see the concern, not only in his children, but also in the former number one whom he had been trying to surpass for so long. I will do everything possible to be worthy of you. The scene changes, it is night, and we are in a factory. We see Hawks point one of his feathers at Dabi, who doesn't flinch. Hawks. It's not what we agreed on. Dabi. Oh right. Hawks. Can't we get along better, Dabi? The audience is left in a complete state of shock upon seeing this, and they turn to look at Hawks. W what? Kaminari exclaimed in total shock. B, but how? Are you friends with that damn Scarface? And you helped him plan that attack? He exclaimed furiously, ready to attack the current number 2 hero if necessary. Oh wow, looks like we have another villain to beat up. Mirko said annoyed while cracking her knuckles. Hey, I know you have a lot of questions. Hawk said, raising his arms, hoping to calm the waters, and looking at Endeavor, who was the only one present that he notified of the threat, that is the Paranormal Liberation Front. But I can't reveal anything, sorry. Everyone calm down, Nezu said, before turning his full attention to Hawks. Hawks, you better explain to us. Because it is highly probable that one way or another, we will discover the truth. So the best thing would be for you to explain yourself. Hawks thought silently for a few seconds before relenting. Okay, but the Hero Commission isn't going to like this. They don't approve of almost anything I do, but look at me. Here I am. Besides, we are not going to reveal anything to them yet. Sometime after the Camino incident, the Commission assigned me a special mission. Hawks said. Special? What did they ask you to do? Fukadashi asked. Let me infiltrate the League and get all the information I can about them. The plan is to gain their trust, become a double agent, and take them down when the opportunity arises. Hawks said. That's why I got in contact with Dabi and started trying to gain his trust. But it wasn't easy at all. That bastard is a very distrustful person, and he gave me several tests to gain his trust. And recently I did it. I got him to invite me to a meeting where they were formalizing their alliance with another group of villains, and I was able to see several really worrying things. The audience is greatly alarmed upon hearing this. All is true, Naomasa said worriedly. Nothing he said was a lie. Midoriya writes everything down in his notebook. What things? Mount Lady asked worriedly. And what did you have to do to earn his trust? Takoyami asked his mentor. These are details that I cannot reveal, Hawk said somewhat awkwardly. But you will probably see it later. I just hope they can understand that sometimes we make difficult decisions for the greater good. Takoyami was going to insist with the question before Nezu continued the video again, so the audience returned their attention to the screen. Dabi asks if it wasn't that he only had pathetic feathers left, to which Hawks replies that he couldn't visit a liar unarmed. That damn. Mirko said, furious with Dabi. What did he tell you was going to happen? Cementos asked. You will see. Hawks said he remembers that conversation perfectly. Hawks. It was supposed to be tomorrow at a factory on the coast, but it was in the middle of the city. And that Namu was not like the previous ones. I would prefer to be notified in advance. So he told you that he was going to release a Namu in a factory. Komori said. Did you really believe it? Mirko asked. Of course not. Hawks snorted. I didn't ask Endeavor to go for nothing. I'm really sorry, Endeavor. It's okay. You did the right thing by asking me to come. Endeavor said, downplaying it. I don't think any other hero would have been able to handle that Namu. And my injuries, as I already told you, are my own responsibility. Dabi, change your mind. Did I forget to mention that it was a test of the Namu's abilities? I'm sorry. Although you didn't do your part either. You told me you'd send some random strong guy. Number 1 is useless to prove anything. The villain lied. What a surprise. Vlad said. But how can number 1 not serve to prove anything? Is he stupid or what? Bakugo asked, furious with the villain. If Endeavor had lost that fight, Asui said worriedly. I don't even want to think what would have happened. Although on the other hand, this only reinforces the fact that Dabi has some kind of interest in Endeavor. Recovery Girl said worriedly. This is really weird. Yaoyorozu said, surprised. Considering the damage Endeavor suffered in that fight, he should be happy. I have a couple of theories here. Nezu thought. I'll wait to be sure though. Hawks. It's seriously injured number 1. So you should be happy. I didn't break my promise, you did. The audience feels strange about Dabi's motives as well as his actions. Especially they can't understand why even though Endeavor was seriously injured in the fight, he doesn't seem happy at all. That guy is really very strange. Tetsu said. Dabi. We're not going to trust number 2 just like that. Removes the feather from his neck. This was to test whether you could be trusted. Also, how come no one died today? Dabi comments that it is not like someone who wants to collaborate. Only for Hawks to respond that his value as an ally depends on his position as a hero, and that he cannot lose the trust that has been placed in him. So he asked you to help him orchestrate that incident. As a test of trust? Midoriya asked. What he asked me to do was get a fairly strong hero to fight a Namu that he was going to release in that abandoned factory. Hawks said. But he never informed me what type of Namu he was, or what his intention was with him. As I was worried that something might happen, I called Endeavor. That was a good decision. Ectoplasm said. I don't think any other hero would have been able to defeat that monster. Maybe not individually. Midoriya said. Maybe a team could have, especially if Aizawa-sensei participated too. His quirk would be a good countermeasure against the Nomus. That would actually be a good idea. Aizawa said in agreement with his student. Although there are many heroes who prefer to work alone, Rukyu said. Although on the other hand Dabi is no fool. Naomasa said worriedly. He's cautious enough not to trust Hawks just like that. Well, most villains would be wary under those circumstances, Aizawa said. It wasn't easy to get him to trust me, Hawks said, uncomfortable remembering the things he had to do to earn Dabi's trust. Dabi leaves, but first tells Hawks that he can't take him to the boss yet, and to contact him again. Well, now I know why I couldn't get along with Shigaraki, Hawes said. At that time he, and the rest of the league, were busy fighting that thing. Did he ask you to do something else, Master? Takoyami asked hesitantly. Yeah, Hawks said awkwardly. I had to do one more thing to get me along with the rest of the league. Something you might see later. The rest of the audience worries about whatever Dabi asked Hawks to do, but they turn their attention to the screen. The scene changes again. We see a flashback of Hawks speaking with the president of the Heroes Public Safety Commission and one of her assistants, who ask Hawks to infiltrate the league and obtain all the information he can about them. Well, this just confirms it, Rukiyu said. Those from the commission mention that during the Camino incident, they rushed to rescue the hostages, and that due to lack of information, they misjudged the power of the villains, and that this time they need to gather all the information possible before attacking Erse, especially about the Nomus and their creation. Yes, only the gift of a foe can make them. That's actually true, Gran Torino said. The best thing would have been to wait a little and obtain more information about the League to be able to attack. But that kidnapping precipitated things. Bakugo clenches his fists, annoyed at the fact that he was kidnapped by the villains and everything that happened afterward. Even though All Might told him that none of this was his fault, he still feels responsible for the former number one's retirement. And apparently the Nomus are created by that doctor, Nezu said thoughtfully. Although we still don't know the process, or how many they can manufacture. The fact that Dabi tried to recover the Kyushu Namu is interesting in itself. Hawks asks if he should turn a blind eye to the League's crimes. But the president's assistant responds that they ask him because they believe he is the right one for the mission. Hawks only mentions that they know he can't refuse. Well, that's true, Hawks said. I really couldn't refuse. Back at the factory, we can see Dabi looking towards the sea. Dabi. Ah, I remember Snatch. Had a good time, damn Frankenstein, Bakugo exclaimed annoyed. And for you to say it, Kamakiri said, looking angrily at Dabi. We see a flashback of the attack on the convoy transporting Overhaul, and Snatch asks Dabi if he ever thought about the families of his victims. Dabi sheds a tear of blood before saying that he thought about it so much that he went crazy. The audience is greatly surprised to see this reaction from Dabi, as they did not expect him to actually feel at least some remorse for his actions, and are also taken aback by the fact that he cries blood and not tears. No one says anything for a few seconds, and the next episode starts playing. That damn. Bakugo was cut off by Tsuntori. A disappointment? You should be happy with the mess you caused, you damn bastard, Suntory exclaimed annoyed, surprising her classmates, schoolmates, and the teachers. Huh, well said, Monoma grinned proudly. Kendo smacked him on the back of the head. So when was this? Mandalay turned to Hawks. A few weeks after the Kyushu incident. Hawks said, visibly uncomfortable. This is what he asked me to do before he agreed to take me to the rest of the league. What did he ask you to do, Master? Takoyami asked, extremely concerned about what Dabi asked his mentor to do. You'll see. Just don't hate me when you see it, Hawks said, increasing the audience's concern. Hawks. Same here. There were too many unforeseen events. We see a flashback to the Kyushu incident. If you had warned me, I would have prepared it better. Yes, I could have prevented it from becoming a disaster like that, Hawks grumbled. But Dabi obviously wasn't going to give me all the details. He's a villain. Did you expect anything else? Aizawa asked matter-of-factly. No, Hawks said. And Dabi in particular is smart enough not to fall for that kind of stuff. Is there anything you can tell us about him? Naomasa asked, hoping to get more information about the pyromancer. Perhaps something that could allow us to capture him. Unfortunately not. Hawks said disappointedly. I have been investigating all the members of the League, but he and Shigaraki are the only ones about whom I have not been able to find out anything at all. The only thing I could say about Dabi is that he is extremely distrustful and a quite intelligent individual, and most of the time he is calm and collected, which makes him extremely more dangerous. Their concern grew upon hearing Hawk's description of Dabi. Midoriya write down everything he just said. Maybe there is, but at the moment I haven't found it, Hawk said. This is certainly strange, Nezu said thoughtfully. Dabi, you talk a lot. You won't be able to track my phone. Hawks, I'm not trying. He's smart enough to make sure he's not tracked, Naomasa said, somewhat surprised. Unfortunately. The first time we spoke on the phone, I tried to track him down, but he called from a public phone, so it was useless. Hawks said, annoyed. It doesn't matter how smart Frankenstein thinks he is. He will fall sooner or later, Bakugo yelled out. Hawks began his descent and lands on a building. Several civilians are excited to see him, and the fact that he is talking on the phone. Civilian 1. Enthusiastic, who are you talking to? Do you have a girlfriend? Civilian 2. Crying, oh no. The audience laughed at the civilian's assumption. This is actually really funny, Kirishima laughed. Wow, Hawks, you have a really lovely girlfriend. You should introduce her to us someday. Rukiu said jokingly. Go ahead. I really want to meet her, Mirko said, cracking her knuckles. That was really embarrassing. Hawks thought, embarrassed, looking away with a slight red on his cheeks. Hawks, it's a secret. That's one way to put it, Vlad said. Well, obviously I couldn't tell them that I was talking to a member of the League, you know. Hawks sighed, though it was barely audible. He didn't want to anger the number 1 hero. He then walks away from the civilians and continues talking to Dabi, asking him to trust him and talking about how he wants the hero job to go away. Elsewhere, Dabi, who is wearing a hoodie to go unnoticed, talks to Hawks from a public phone booth. Oh, so that's where Dabi was, Fat Gum said. That guy is cautious enough to call from a public telephone and wear clothes to go unnoticed, Naomasa said while looking at Dabi. It's not going to be easy to catch him. Where is it? Gran Torino asked. Dabi, you can't get rid of me. You call me only because you are aware of my value. As long as I play dumb, you will think more about my profitability than the risks. You want to take advantage of me, don't you? There was then a close-up of Hawks and Dabi's eyes, both serious and intimidating. The audience tenses as they see the close-up of Hawks and Dabi's eyes. That guy is smart enough not to be fooled, Nezu said thoughtfully. He knows perfectly well that Hawks is using him the same way he uses him. Whoever he is, there is no doubt that he is an intelligent and calculating villain, Naomasa said. And he is not wrong, Hawks said. Obviously, I am in contact with him to extract any information about the League, but unfortunately, he is not stupid enough to give it to me just like that. He's a villain, not an idiot, Aizawa said. Dabi, this will be the last time. Hawks smiles when he hears that. So this thing he asked you was the last thing he asked you to do? Egdeshot asked. Not quite, Hawks said. It was the last thing I had to do before he agreed to take me to Shigaraki and the rest of the League. The audience worries about whatever Dabi asked Hawks to do. Dabi, show your loyalty to the League and those who oppose the system. And this time don't go with number 1. And once again, he is with the same thing. Yeah, Yurazu said, surprised. Why wouldn't he want the number one? This is certainly strange and worrying, Shota said. Definitely, Ribbit. Asui said, worried like the rest of the audience. I really would like to know what interest he have in this. Nezu thought, worried. It is difficult to know with so little information about Dabi. But I hope that these tapes contain the answer to these questions. Endeavor, on the other hand, feels uncomfortable seeing this strange interest that Dabi seems to have in him again. In the HPSC building, we see Hawks communicating with the president and informing her that Dabi is still on alert and that their conversations are probably being spied on, so they should only communicate using codes. He also says that he will continue looking for the Nomus. Well, that's for sure. Aizawa said, agreeing with Hawks. In circumstances like these, it is best to be cautious. Were you able to find out anything about the Nomus? Pixie Bob asked. At the moment, no. Hawks said, frustrated by his lack of real progress. From what we could see, that doctor is the one who creates the Nomus in that laboratory, although we have no more information about it. Nezu said. We should investigate more about this, especially the location of that laboratory. All Might said, to which the rest of the heroes nodded in agreement. At best, Genius House. He was surprised fact that Hawks is there. The audience were surprised as well, especially because if it is on the tapes, it is highly likely that this is something relevant. Hawks asks how he's been, to which Genius replies that his health has improved. We see a flashback to the Camino incident and the attack Genius suffered at the hands of a foe. Poor Genius. He really suffered very serious injuries on Camino. Mount Lady sympathized, as she recalled that terrifying moment. He was very lucky to survive. Recovery Girl said, as she remembered the injuries Genius suffered. Bakugo was furious. He still felt guilty. If they hadn't kidnapped me, none of that would have happened. All Might clenches his fists furiously at what his nemesis did to a fellow hero. Hawks asks if the Yua old woman can help him. But Genius denies it since Recovery Girl's quirk cannot replace lost organs. Old woman, I'll teach you manners, young man. Recovery Girl says, annoyed at being called that way by Hawks. Hawks gave her a nervous smile as an apology. Beast Genius says that he will return to his job as a hero soon, to which Hawks simply replies, I see. The camera gets behind Hawks, revealing him holding one of his feathers with a grim look. That's a shame. The audience got very scared as they contemplated what just happened on screen and turned to look at Hawks. I hope you didn't do what I think you did, Mirko exclaimed, furiously getting ready to pounce. GRR. What the hell did you do to Denim Head? Bakugo exclaimed in rage. His hands began sparking. Please relax for a moment. Hawks nervously tried to defend, raising his hands to try to calm the situation. I didn't kill him if that's what you're thinking, at least not permanently. What does that mean? Shibaraba asked suspiciously. I talked to Genius and the HPSC, and we agreed that we would fake Genius' death so that Dabi would finally agree to take me to the rest of the league. We agreed that we would put him in a state of suspended animation so Dabi could see his body and believe it. Hawks explained. And where is he right now? 13 asked, concerned for Genius' safety. At the league's current headquarters. Hawks said, much to the audience's concern. Although I'm going to wake him up, we're just waiting for the right moment. All is true. My quirk does not detect any lies. Naomasa said, calming the others down. Denim Head better be okay. Growled Bakugo, who although tries not to show it, is worried about Genius. We see Hawks flying again, this time with a big bag, heading to a city. Hawks. It's disturbing. It is the agreed time, but there is no sign. In the Hero Network, there are also no incidents or sightings of the League. Something happened. He's not acting normally. The audience got tense seeing this. What happened? Kaminari asked. Yeah, why wouldn't he show up? Kamakiri asked surprised. What happened? Vlad asked, in Dabi's absence. Maybe he went to help the rest of the league with that thing. Yaoyorozu theorized, remembering Machia. Whatever it is, we'll probably see what happened. Midnight said, with the rest of the audience feeling nervous about whatever made Dabi not go to the meeting with Hawks, and why there were no sightings of the league. We see Hawks flying and carrying the bag. He thinks about how he hopes his determination is not in vain. Let's hope not, Master. Takoyami said. Everything will be fine, I hope. Mirio said. The next thing we see is Shigaraki fighting with Gigantomachia and being seriously injured. The league is still fighting against that monster, Ashido said, scared when she saw him. If that thing can do that to Shigaraki with ease, Uraraka couldn't finish the sentence due to fear. That thing is going to be a real headache. No matter how hard I try to think of a strategy against that thing, it's really difficult. Yaoyorozu said. The only thing I can think of would be to use my quirk on him, and take advantage of the fact that All for One's voice can control him. But it still might not work. Shinso said thoughtfully. But on the other hand, it would be nice if that thing got rid of the league members for us. Mirko said. Rumi, you shouldn't say those things, and even less in front of the students, Rukiyu scolded her. It was revealed that Shigaraki was actually a clone of Twice, which got undone, much to Machia's disappointment. The audience were surprised to see that Shigaraki was just a clone. Damn, several people exclaimed in disappointment. Okay, but what the hell just happened? Kaminari asked, surprised. Simple, that's not the real Shigaraki. Gran Torino explained, much to the confusion of people who are unaware of Twice's quirk. That's Twice Double's quirk. Naomasa explained. It allows Hum to create doubles of objects or people, although it has a limit of 2 copies, and once a copy falls apart it decomposes into mud like that. Yes, I remember it well, Aizawa said while remembering his encounter with Dabi at the training camp, who turned out to actually be a clone of Twice. Wow, that's an amazing quirk, Midoriya said while writing in his notebook. Although it is also dangerous in the wrong hands. We see Mr. Compress, Twice and Shigaraki fighting Machia, but he easily repels them. That thing, Komori said, intimidated when she saw Machia's strength and the ease with which he repelled the league, like the rest of the audience. It's definitely going to be a problem, Rukiyu said. Elsewhere, Toga and Spinner observes everything from afar. Toga comments that the future king is in trouble. Geez, what makes you think that? Bakugo said sarcastically. It is mentioned that a month and a half has passed since the doctor entrusted them with the mission of taming Machia before putting himself at his complete disposal and giving Shigaraki the power he had promised him. But so far they have not been successful. We also see how Shigaraki continues fighting with Machia. A month and a half? Gyro exclaims in surprise. No wonder that thing is giving them a fight, Mandalay said. But they better not manage to tame that colossus. Unfortunately, they succeeded, Hawks thought worriedly. And what's worse, that doctor is probably already giving Shigaraki that power he promised him. The only thing I know is that he is in a hospital, but I have not yet been able to determine the exact location. I hope that is on these tapes. That little punk is actually very tenacious, Gran Torino said, looking at the grandson of his dear friend Nana. Spinner. He can fight non-stop for 48 hours and 44 minutes. Then he sleeps for about 3 hours and immediately returns to the attack. As he fights, his body enlarges, and he finds Shigaraki wherever he is. The audience is shocked to hear this information. The students gulped in fear. That thing is definitely a lot tougher than I thought, Gran Torino says worriedly. Definitely, Midoriya said while writing everything down in his notebook. This is terrible, Pixie Bob exclaimed worriedly. Spinner. Shigaraki hasn't been able to sleep much. That beast can kill him, but he still smiles. We see a close-up of Shigaraki, where although his face is covered by one of his hands, we see him smiling. That's disturbing, Hagakure said. Yep, Asui said, scared when she saw him, like the rest of the audience. Spinner. Even if the rest of us retreat, Shigaraki, his master's successor, is his only objective. Except for Shigaraki, the rest in turns. Elsewhere, Toga and Spinner walk through the forest. It kind of makes sense. Midnight said thoughtfully. If Shigaraki is his target, it makes sense for him to ignore the rest of the league. Spinner. The doctor gave us some money, and Toga bought a new coat. We see Toga walking with her new coat on. She seems happy with the coat. Toga. If it's cold, I don't move so well. I like cute clothes with this silhouette. The audience, Uraraka and Asui in particular, are surprised to see Toga's relaxed attitude. She looks like an ordinary student, Uraraka said in surprise. If it weren't for the fact that she attacked us at the camp, I would think she was a girl like any other. It's really a shame that a girl as young as her ended up like that. Nezu said, saddened by this fact. To think that she is only 17 years old. Who cares about that crazy bitch? Bakugo exclaimed, not caring. She decided her path when she decided to be a murderous lunatic. Several students nod in agreement with him, while Uraraka for her part is somewhat curious about Toga. Spinner. You came because you adored Stain, right? There is no trace of him in the league. What are you doing here? The audience were surprised to hear Spinner's question, and were now curious themselves. Oh, right. Besides Dabi, Spinner and Toga are also Stain fans, Vlad said with a frown. Damn it, Ida muttered, annoyed by how some villains were inspired by Stain and his ideology. It seems that villain is having doubts about the league, Midoriya said, somewhat surprised by this. At the end of the day, it is false that Stain was a member of the league. Shigaraki invented that to recruit more people, and unfortunately he succeeded. Who cares about the lizard's doubts? He brought it upon himself by joining a group of villains, Bakugo coldly stated. Toga. Smiling, I like Mr. Stain. And Izuku and Ochako. I hope I can love a lot of people. This made the audience uncomfortable. That girl is really very strange, Takage said awkwardly. That's an understatement. She is completely crazy, Bakugo yelled at her. Definitely, Ribbit, Asui said awkwardly as she remembered her meeting with Toga at the camp. Wait, that means she really likes me? Midoriya exclaimed, surprised and somewhat uncomfortable by this fact. So it seems, Uraraka said, surprised to see that Toga is really in love with her. Great, a crazy girl likes them, Siro said. Considering what their idea of love is, it's really terrifying. Komori said, scared of Toga, to which several nod in agreement, finding Toga's love disturbing. Spinner. She's a free spirit. That's another way of saying she's totally crazy, Bakugo said. The league meets in a clearing, now that Machia has fallen asleep, a time they take advantage of to rest. Toga. Are you alive, Tamura? Shigaraki. Yes. It's very slow. Compared to when I started, I'm getting closer. I will make him kneel before me. The audience tenses upon hearing Shigaraki's words. Could he really tame that monster? Minta asked, scared. Let's hope not, Asui said, worried. I don't even want to imagine the chaos he would unleash with a monster like that on his side. The rest of the audience is also scared to imagine what could happen with Shigaraki controlling Machia. The worst thing is that he did achieve it, Hawks thought worriedly. Spinner thinks that Shigaraki has the look of a child chasing a dream. A dream? More like a nightmare, Hagakure exclaimed. Shigaraki's goal is literally to destroy everything. It is the dream of a disturbed mind, Kiwaro said, displeased. Twice his phone rings, and he comments that it is a call from Jiren. To the surprise of the rest of the league, since they had not been able to contact him in a long time. Well, this confirms that as we suspected, Jiren is related to the League, Naomasa said, narrowing his eyes. Excuse me for asking, sir, but who is Jiren? Ida asked, because he is not familiar with that name like the rest of the students who also do not know who Jiren is. Jiren is an underground intermediary who supplies resources such as weapons, costumes, information, and people to various villains, explained Aizawa, who as an underground hero has had to deal with Jiren from time to time. This information surprises the students. But if they know about Jiren's criminal activities, how is it possible that he is not in jail? Yayurazu asked. For one reason, knowing something and trying it are two very different things. Aizawa explained. Jiren knows the legal system perfectly. He is smart enough to make sure he doesn't leave anything that incriminates himself. In addition to having many contacts and ties in the underworld, which makes it practically impossible to get evidence or witnesses against him. So we have no choice but to leave it like this. But how is that possible? Kendo asked in surprise. Because that's how the criminal justice system works. In order to convict someone, their guilt must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And to achieve that, evidence must be collected that is valid in a trial. Vlad explained. Most of the villains the heroes fight are careless enough to attack in public, so getting evidence is not difficult. But others like Jiren are much more discreet in their activities, which makes getting evidence much more difficult. Against him. Wow. Bakugo said blankly. The system can be imperfect, and that is why we have to constantly strive to improve it. 13 said. In addition, it is important not only to obtain evidence, but that it must also be valid in a trial, since otherwise a villain could take advantage of this. There have already been cases of villains having important evidence dismissed because it was obtained incorrectly, or even being released from prison due to technicalities. The students nod in understanding the importance of getting evidence so that the villains can be convicted. Twice answers the call, asking upset why he hasn't answered their calls before. Before an unknown voice apologizes, saying it wasn't because Jiren didn't want him to not contact them. The audience becomes extremely tense, seeing this turn of events. Several people exclaim in surprise. What happened to him? Yanagi asked, surprised. We don't really know, Aizawa said. Jiren has been practically missing for several months. We suspected that he had died in some conflict with one of his clients, but we could not confirm it. Whatever happened to him, we will soon find out, Shishida said. The villains realize that the person who called them knows their names and aliases, and is using a voice modulator to camouflage their identity. Whoever is speaking, they're careful to use a voice modulator, Gran Torino said, noticing this detail. Given what he's doing, it makes sense, Midnight said. Not many would dare contact the League of Villains. And taking into account that they called them with Jiren's phone number, and that he was missing, Tiger does not finish the sentence, but the audience is horrified to realize what probably happened. Oh no, Rukyu says, worried. The voice orders them to watch the news, which the League members do, seeing a news channel presenter announcing that a finger has been found in the center of Fukuoka, and that the connection of this case with 4 others is being investigated. Fingers previously found in different places. Below are the places where the fingers were found: the Shai Hasakai boss's residence, Hasu Terminal, the highway where Overhaul's convoy was attacked, and Camino. Compress mentions that those are all places they were. The audience is shocked and horrified to see this. Ah! Several people exclaimed in horror and disgust. Those fingers. They belong to. Uraraka is horrified when she realizes what the news they are seeing meant. Yes, they are his, Naomasa said, surprising the audience. We were able to identify him thanks to his fingerprints, and we have been investigating the case for a while now. Being about Jiren, and the fact that his fingers were found, as that villain said, in places that the League was, We are almost convinced that it was some kind of message to the League, although we could not find more information about it. He said, somewhat frustrated by this last fact. The audience is even more horrified to realize what this means. So, Jiren is dead? Ashido asked, scared. He may be a villain, but it still seems like a horrible fate to him. Maybe, or they might use him as a hostage, Egdeshot said. Either way, we'll find out what's going on here, Pixie Bob said. Elsewhere, a man with a big nose and elegantly dressed observes the landscape from what appears to be an office. He identifies himself as Redistro, the leader of the Meta Liberation Army. The audience is shocked to see what is happening on the screen, while Midoriya takes notes on this new group of villains. Redistro, Meta Liberation Army. Several of the heroes exclaim in surprise. I thought the army had been disbanded years ago, All Might said, surprised. Apparently not, Gran Torino said. Evidently, they are still active. And lately, there has been a bit of a resurgence, Hawks said, especially with the reissue of Distro's autobiography. Midoriya, Bakugo, and Shoto are surprised to remember that Hawks gave them copies of that book. I remember you told me that the League had 100,000 members, and you used precisely that book to convey the message. Is it them? Endeavor thought, worried. Hold on, Mirio exclaimed when he realized a detail. Why does that Redistro guy look so familiar to me? Because you've probably seen him on TV, Power Loader said to the surprise of the audience. It's Rikiya Yatsubashi, president and CEO of Detnerat Company. I have heard rumors that they are under constant pressure from the commission because their supporting articles frequently appear on the black markets. And seeing as he has admitted to being the leader of a group of villains, I think we already know why, Kamui Wood said. Shigaraki asks if retro is in fashion, and that there is a book about it that is selling a lot lately. Even the League has heard of them, Kaminari said, surprised. Well, no wonder, Gran Torino said. Considering that All for One raised him, it is highly likely that he told him about the army. Especially considering that Distro was, after All for One, the most feared villain in Japan. Redistro says that they are not imitators, but the original Meta Liberation Army. The audience also see Jiren in his office, who is being held hostage, tied to a chair and beaten. The audience was even more horrified by what they are seeing. If what that guy is saying is true, this would confirm that the army was never disbanded as such, Mandalay said worriedly. It is. I do not detect any lies in his words, Naomasa said worriedly. Redistro appears to be a legacy villain, Vlad said worriedly. And he used Jiren to get something from the League, although what? Whatever it is, it's definitely something bad, Present Mike said. Redistro, our goal is to release the quirks. We will demolish the bases to create a world where everyone can freely use their quirks. He even inherited the ideology of the original Distro, 13 said. It makes sense being a legacy villain, Rukiyu said. Redistro, and why were we going to face each other? Shigaraki, release the mediator and call again. Now I'm busy. When I finish, I will listen to them. The audience is surprised to see Shigaraki's attitude. It's really not a good time for him, Kodai said. He's very busy with that monster. Redistro refuses to release his hostage and praises Jiren's loyalty to the League, as he refused to give up information about them, even though he was tortured and had all the fingers cut off from one hand. Oh wow, that guy is really very tough, Nejire exclaimed in surprise. It's really manly, even coming from a guy like him, Kirishima said, surprised by Jiren's loyalty to the League and his refusal to provide information about them. And that's another reason why Jiren is a pain, Naomasa sighed. He will never talk about the people he works with, even with the threat of years in prison. Admirable, but frustrating at the same time, Mirko huffed in frustration. we see several important members of the Meta Liberation Army and the companies or parties they control, while Redistro explains how they have taken root waiting for the moment to attack. He also mentions the fact that the army has 116,516 highly trained warriors hidden throughout Japan, and who are just waiting for the order to attack. The audience were shocked and scared even more to hear all this. "Damn, that is really bad," Mirio exclaimed. "Those guys have been a parasite that has grown in our society, waiting for the moment to attack." Kiwaro said surprised. "And there are that many," Kaminari exclaimed in surprise. "And some of them also seem to be well-known people with access to resources." All Might said worried. "Almost like the ones he had before his empire was destroyed. I can't believe this has gone unnoticed for so long. How is it possible that I never realized this during my career as a hero? So if those are 100,000, does that mean that the League allied itself with them? Either way, this is really not good." Endeavor thought, worried about what he was seeing. "Spinner, it has to be a lie. Unfortunately, it seems to be very real." Midoriya said worried. "And to think that until recently, we were completely unaware of all this." Kendo said surprised. "If it weren't for the fact that we are seeing it, I would also have a hard time believing it." Redistro mentions the place where the League is, to their surprise, which causes Twice to throw his phone, although the call is not cut off. "What? How could those guys locate the League when we heroes have spent months investigating any information that would lead us to their arrest?" Pixie Bob asked, stunned by what he was seeing. "That's a really good question," Amajiki said with interest. "Redistro. Lately, a satellite captured them. We will find them wherever they are." "Oh, that explains it all," Ragdoll said. "A satellite? Wow, those guys must really have a lot of resources if they have a satellite." Yaoyorozu said surprised. "And why don't we also use a satellite to catch the villains?" Ashido asked. "Because it is illegal," Power Loader said. "You can't use satellites to determine someone's location because it violates privacy laws. And as explained before, if we break the law to catch them, the villains could benefit from that later. Besides, if we broke the law, we would be no different from villains," Vlad said sternly. Some students, especially those who participated in Bakugo's rescue, have some doubts about this, because they technically broke the law by rescuing Bakugo or fighting with Stain. But if they had not done so, the consequences could have been much worse. Even so, they recognize that it is important to follow the law, especially if they want to be heroes. Redistro gives the League an ultimatum. Either they face the army, or they will report them to the heroes for arrest. The audience were greatly surprised to hear Redistro's ultimatum to THE League. "Does that mean that the League and the Meta Liberation Army will have a confrontation?" Uraraka's eyes widened as she spoke. "That seems to be where this is heading," Hagakure said. "Those bastards," Mirko exclaimed furiously. "How dare they expect us to take care of their dirty work for them?" "It's not that strange, actually," Fat Gum said. "Many times it is the criminals themselves who denounce other criminals in order to get rid of them, and the heroes and police end up doing the dirty work for them. Redistro. The leader of this movement must be Distro. They became known, and we cannot allow them to take our place from us. Once we crush them, our revolution will begin." We see a portrait of Distro hanging on a wall. We also see that Redistro is surrounded by high-ranking members of the army. So they want to get rid of the League because of that? Why did they become infamous? Kodai exclaimed in surprise. "Those villains have a tremendous ego," Mirko said annoyed. Redistro challenges the League to a fight in Deka City in 1 hour. He also promises to free Jurin if they agree. Redistro. Either you disappear fighting with us or being arrested by the heroes. Choose. The audience is shocked to hear this. "Wait a second," Ida exclaimed in surprise. "Deka City? Were they the ones who caused that incident? B. But how is that possible? Asui exclaimed in surprise. I have no idea, but I did suspect that the League had been involved, Hawk said, catching the audience's attention. When I saw Dabi again, I could see that he had several recent injuries, and he told me that they had made an alliance with another group of villains. Although he refused to give me details about it, I was practically sure that they had some involvement with what happened in Deka. And this would apparently confirm it, Midnight said worriedly. If what you say is true, that means that the League was in some way in a battle with the Meta Liberation Army. Curses! This is getting worse and worse, Mirko said. Twice insists on freeing Jurin. There is also a flashback of Jurin and Twice, and how grateful Twice is to him for introducing him to the League, a place where he can be himself and be accepted. The audience were shocked when they saw this. Then Twice came to the League through Jurin, Aizawa said. The students in the audience are surprised to see Twice's motivation to rescue Jurin, his friend who he is immensely grateful to for introducing him to a group of people who accepted him just as he is. Wow, that guy must have had a really sad life if the League is the place where he finally managed to be accepted. Uraraka thought sadly, wondering what kind of life Twice had before joining the League. Toga mentions that Jurin might be dead by now, and the other League members are cautious about going to meet the army, angering Twice. Finally, Shigaraki takes off the mask, which causes Twice to split. Well, that's true. Although we could see that Jurin is still alive, they have no way of knowing, so caution is good at least for them, Aizawa said. But right now they are between a rock and a hard place, because regardless of Jurin's fate, if they don't go and face the army, they are going to hand them over to the heroes, Mandalay said. Those damn. How dare they use heroes like that? Mirko exclaimed, still furious about this. Hey, what happened to that guy? Kamakiri asked, surprised to see Twice split up. I have no idea. Shubaraba shrugged. Shigaraki asks the doctor if he has heard the talk with Redistro, to which he responds affirmatively, and is surprised by the fact that the army is still active. Well, it seems we're not the only ones who thought the Meta Liberation Army was a thing of the past, Komori said. Interesting, Nezu said. It appears that neither All for One nor his subordinates knew they were still active, which means they really did a good job of staying hidden. But now that we know everything, we'll kick those losers' butts too, Bakugo exclaimed. That's how you speak, Bakubro, I encourage Kirishima. Although I think it's going to be a little more difficult than that. But yeah, Gyro said. Shigaraki asks when Makia will wake up, to which Compress replies that in 2 hours and 35 minutes. It still surprises me that that thing only needs to sleep for 3 hours, Ashido said. You are not the only one, Asui said. That thing is really going to be a big problem, Shinso said. But with a little luck, maybe I can use my quirk to stop him. Shigaraki. Where is Dabi, Doctor? Garaki. Right now, on the border of Mai and Shiga. Shigaraki. It's in a good place. Teleport us. Let's go there. Spinner. Wait, we're going. And do they really have 110,000 warriors? They don't have many other options either, Shishida said. It's that, or get arrested by the heroes. Shigaraki seems to have a plan, Midoriya said, worrying the audience. Huh? Why do you say that, Deku-kun? Uraraka asked. His expression says it all. He is completely serene. Plus, he asked about Makia. Shigaraki. That thing is not invincible. We've been fighting for a month, but he has a lot of life points, and it follows me wherever I am. Spinner is surprised to notice what Shigaraki is planning. The audience makes the same expression as Spinner when they understand what Shigaraki's plan is. Shigaraki. We will make Gigantomachia face those 110,000. Even he will get tired. Well, this just confirms it. Komori said, intimidated. He's going to use that thing to fight the army. Yaoyorozu said, surprised. And he's not wrong. No matter how strong that thing is, even it has its limits, so it will also weaken it. Damn, that bastard will kill two birds with one stone with that. He will eliminate the army and tame that colossus. Bakugo said, furious but somewhat excited. The rest of the audience was scared a lot about this. That brat has really grown up. Gran Torino said. He was able to think of a plan against those guys, and he will also benefit from that. The doctor yells at him and asks him if he hasn't considered the possibility that everything is a lie, to which Shigaraki replies that then an idiot will die. Some laughed at his response, finding the response funny. Although I highly doubt it's a lie, because they really tried hard enough to make a bad joke. Fat Gum said. Not to mention that they have committed several crimes in the process. Egdeshot said. Shigaraki puts his mask back on twice, which reassures him that he is whole again, and the League members prepare to leave to meet the army. Shigaraki. Determined, I will destroy them. The audience is horrified to see this unfold of events and what will happen next, as the next episode begins to play. We already know this, Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed. Why do they put this unnecessary explanation? Kachin. If it's here, it's probably something important. Midoriya said, trying to calm him down. Yeah, Yaoyorozu said, agreeing with her classmate. This scene has a purpose, otherwise it wouldn't be here. The narrator explains how a facet emerged during this time that wanted to be able to use quirks without restrictions, while seeing images of a protest. The audience eyes widen seeing this. That sounds like the ideology of the Meta Liberation Army. Shoto said, remembering the book Hawks had given him not long ago. This could be the origins of the army. Ida said thoughtfully. What was their training and early years like? You see, Bakubro? Looks like that scene was important after all. Kirishima said. Shut up, sh*tty hair. Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed. An image of Distro appears on the screen. Narrator. This is Chikara Yatsubashi. He baptized himself as Distro, the one who destroys the present. So that's Distro, Ida said. Yes, that was in his biography. Midoriya said, to the surprise of some students. Hey, but why would you read that thing? Sato asked, surprised. Partly because Hawks recommended it to me, and also out of curiosity. Midoriya said. I don't agree with Distro at all, but it was certainly interesting to hear his vision. Narrator. Distro organized the Liberationists and formed the Meta Liberation Army. This just confirms it. This is basically how the Meta Liberation Army was formed. Kamui Woods said, to which the rest of the audience nods in agreement. Narrator. They confronted the government, but lost after a few years, and arrested most of the members of the army. Distro committed suicide after finishing writing his work. That's true, Gran Torino said. The army was a real headache, but eventually the heroes and the government defeated them and arrested many of their members. And with the suicide of its leader, it was presumed that the army was finished. Although apparently that wasn't the case, since they went underground and continued to exist. Naomasa said. I really hope they explain at least a little bit of how that is possible. Vlad said. Because I still can't understand how they could have gone unnoticed all this time. Yeah. Fatgum nodded. Narrator. He didn't even know he had a son. The audience is shocked to hear this. Distro had a son. Several people exclaimed in surprise. Yeah, it seems, Ribbit. Asui said. Well, we now know who was the one who continued with the army now. Gran Torino said. Or rather who they were. A family of villains who continued that legacy. Takoyami said. It's a real family business. Kiwaro said. That means that Distro is not only a legacy villain, but he is a direct descendant of the original Distro. Mandalay said, the audience nodding in agreement. Shoto felt somewhat uncomfortable with this since to a certain extent, it is something similar to what his father did with him. While in thought he unknowingly clenched his fist. But he does not want to be a hero like his father. He wants to follow his own hero's path. We see a scene where the members of the Meta Liberation Army meet and talk about the League of Villains since they are enemies of the army and want to eliminate them. Redistro. If the government does nothing, we will have to finish them off ourselves. The League of Villains will fall in Distro's name. If we don't do anything? Seriously? Marco exclaimed, annoyed with what the villain said. We've spent months investigating everything we can about the League to stop them. And these guys just say that. Naomasa said, annoyed with the villains. Although on the other hand, this seems to be how they plan to get rid of the League. Nezu said thoughtfully. Obviously, they are planning something. Hawk said. We see the members of the League observing the city of Deku. Compress mentions that it is a country town that is neither big nor small, and that apparently there are 110,000 soldiers there, in addition to Machia waking up in 1 hour and 40 minutes, and that they do manage to get Machia to fight and win. But he doesn't know if they will last so long. Actually, the odds are not in their favor. Midoriya said thoughtfully. As that villain said, Deku is a relatively isolated city in which it is difficult for them to be detected. The numerical disadvantage is colossal, and there are almost 2 hours until Machia wakes up. And even when he does, he will have to go to Deku, which will take him a time. Wow, they really have everything against them. Kodai said. Though we shouldn't care much either. If they eliminated them, they would do us a favor. Marco said. Rumi, Rukiu told him with annoyance. Unfortunately, it seems that those in the army allied themselves with the League, and here we will see not only their battle, but also their alliance and the consequences of it. Endeavor thought worriedly, remembering not only Hawk's warning, but also the destroyed city from the beginning. Dabi, why do I have to come to? Is that guy serious? Shoji asked surprised. That guy really is very strange. Tetsutetsu said surprised. Twice. You also owe Jiren a lot. Dabi. So what? So he also came to the League because of Jiren? Kaminari asked. Possibly. Gyro said. Although unlike that other guy, he doesn't seem to care much. Once again, he reaffirms that he is a strange guy. Ribbit. Asui said. He's not a villain for nothing. Mirko said. He is really someone who is intriguing, and about whom I know practically nothing about. He is the member of the League about whom there is the least information, and that makes him very dangerous. Hawks thought worriedly. Twice was going to answer, but Himiko puts the League on alert after warning that someone is approaching, which puts the League members in a fighting position. The audience became tense when they see what is happening on the screen. The person who approached the League, the hero Slid and Go, tells them to stop and that he will guide them to where the army leaders are. Spinner was surprised to see that he is a hero, although not one he recognizes. The audience was in complete shock to see that there are heroes involved in the Meta Liberation Army. What? There are also heroes involved, Mount Lady exclaimed in surprise. How in the curses? This just got a lot more complicated, Mirko exclaimed, annoyed by the fact that there are heroes involved with the villains. Unfortunately, it is something that can happen. Aizawa said annoyed. Sometimes there are corrupt heroes who abuse their power, or, as in this case, ally themselves with villains, breaking the oath they have taken to protect society. I hope that never happens to you, my students. The students respond that that will never happen to them. That guy looks very familiar to me. Shoto said, looking at him curiously since he is sure he saw him before. Because we saw it before half-half. Bakugo said annoyed. The day we got our licenses, remember? Both Shoto and All Might's eyes widened in complete shock as they remember the moment they met Slid and Go. They see a view of Deku City, where no one is there, something the League members noticed. They walk around the city following Slit and Go. The audience feels tension watching this scene, as it is the calm before the approaching storm. Others, like Bakugo, for their part, feel some excitement about the upcoming fight. As they advance, they see a hero on the roof of a house. Shigaraki mentions that the entire city belongs to the army, heroes included, which Trumpet confirms. That explains a lot of things. Hawks said seriously, frowning at the screen. Yeah, Endeavor said. If the city is theirs, and there are heroes involved, it doesn't surprise me that they were able to cover up what happened there. That guy looks familiar to me, Zero said, looking at Trumpet curiously. Now that you said it, it's true, Sato said, watching too. Yes, you're not mistaken. That guy is known, Nejire said. He's a politician or something. Actually, you're right, Nejire, Rukyu said. That guy is Koku Hanabata. He is the leader of the Hearts and Mind Party, and he is a very important politician. And apparently, he is involved in the Meta Liberation Army, Midnight said. Oh, wow. The media is going to have a field day when this comes out, Mirko said. That's for sure, those pesky vultures, Aizawa said, annoyed at the thought of journalists and how irritating they can be. Although in this case he is fine with the villains being exposed. Trumpet. This is Deka. 90% of the citizens are warriors of the Meta Liberation Army. Trumpet is accompanied by Curious. The audience were shocked when they heard this. Damn, this is really bad, Mandalay exclaimed, worried. It seems that the 110,000 thing was not an exaggeration, Ragdoll said worriedly. Trumpet. Thank you for coming from so far away. Today is a special day. You are our guests of honor. Remind me to never go to an event organized by these people. If these are their guests, and they treat them that way, I'll pass, Mount Lady said, to which several nod in agreement. Compress recognizes Trumpet as a politician, much to Spinner's surprise. Even the League members heard about that guy, Ashido said, somewhat surprised when she found out. Well, I guess they should watch the news or find out a little about things, Midnight said. At least some of them, like Compress. Trumpet. Let's start with the Adventist festival. Snaps his fingers, and several members of the army suddenly appear, attacking the members of the League of the Meta Liberation Army. Mr. Compress. Dodging well, it's really going to be 110,000. The audience watches in amazement as the battle between the League of Villains begins. Twice. It doesn't matter. We are already here. Where is Jurin? Trumpet. The mediator is with the Supreme Leader. Twice. They said they would release him if we came. And you are stupid enough to believe that? Bakugo exclaimed. Apparently yes. I find it hard to believe that this guy has lived so long if he is so naive as to believe something like that, Mirko said. And I'm not talking about his life as a villain. I'm talking about life in general. Shigaraki. He's a deputy boss. Several members of the army head towards him, but Shigaraki simply disintegrates them. We go towards the tower. Again making references to video games. How stupid. Bakugo said, annoyed. He really is a man-child. Mirko mocked the leader of the League. He's not wrong, though, Aizawa said seriously. I wouldn't say it in those words, but he's right. The rest of the audience nods in agreement. Himiko. I'm good with that. Suddenly the ground beneath her feet explodes, causing her to be thrown several meters and crash onto the ground. The audience were surprised by what just happened. What the hell? Kaminari exclaimed in surprise. The ground beneath their feet exploded, Sato exclaimed in surprise. That means that there is someone in the army with a quirk that allows him to blow things up, Bakugo said, surprised to see that someone in the army has a quirk similar to his. Midoriya watched while simultaneously taking notes in his notebook. Curious. The bleeding cases. They are your work, right, Toga Himiko? She observes Himiko with great interest. Why did a young student go crazy? A shocking interview from when she was still alive. Will you grant it to me? The audience is greatly surprised to hear this. What? That woman wants to interview the crazy girl? Bakugo exclaimed in surprise. So it seems, Kendo said, surprised. Although I can't understand why she would want to do something like that. That girl must be as crazy as she is, Ribbit, Asui said awkwardly. When she was still alive? That means, Yoroka said, uncomfortable by what those words meant. Himiko looks at her with disgust and answers no. I honestly can't understand how she thought she would accept. Takage said, surprised. They are in the middle of a fight to the death. She is not up to those things. In a high tower from which they can see the entire city, there was Jurens, tied to a chair and looked very beaten. He says that the army made 2 mistakes, using him as a damsel in distress, and that if the League sends a Namu, they will be finished. The audience tensed upon hearing the word Namu, that the League could destroy the entire city if they sent a Namu. Now that he mentioned it, why didn't they do that from the beginning? Kaminari said, confused. Send a Namu to attack the city instead of going on a suicide mission like that. The others were wondering the same thing. That's actually a very good question, jamming yay, Gyro said, surprised that Kaminari had noticed something like that. I have a couple of theories about it, Nezu said. Redistro confidently answers that they can't send a Namu and explains the 3 reasons why he believes this. The first is that until now the Nomus always accompanied the League. They saw scenes of the attack on the Usch and other incidents with Nomus. But in Kamino that became a mere rumor and the League remained active. Second, the high end that appeared in Kyushu scenes from the Kyushu incident are seen, expelled white Nomus, and there were indications that it was manipulated, but it had ordinary strength. And third, Dabi's appearance is seen in Kyushu going to look for the Namu. Dabi's statement. It showed that they could only use the black Namu. In short, Nomus are something offered to them by their employer, all for one, and they ran out of ammo to use. The audience is greatly surprised to hear Redistro's points. I see, Nezu said thoughtfully. So he realized that. Yeah, Hawks said seriously. From what we have seen, although that doctor can create Nomus, it seems that All for One plays a fundamental role in the process, although we still do not know what the process is like. But on the other hand, it's good to know, Pixie Bob said. If they can't use the Nomus, we can have an advantage against them. While I appreciate your enthusiasm, we shouldn't take anything for granted, Aizawa said seriously. From what we saw, there are still Nomus in that laboratory. They just became more careful in using them. Unfortunately, you are right, Endeavor said. And on top of that, they are high ends. Redistro, a league without Nomus. They are just any band. They see a scene of the combat that is happening in the city. The audience is surprised to see the fight happening on the screen. That villain is making a serious mistake by underestimating them, Gran Torino said. The members of the League have proven to be much more troublesome than we originally believed. And they have gotten stronger all this time, Naomasa said worriedly. We really should have prioritized their capture, and we could have avoided so many things. Don't worry, Tsukachi, All Might said, trying to cheer up his friend. We'll catch them. Spinner is fighting a guy who has fish hands, and they attack him with a water attack, causing him to back away, while thinking that they are all pretty strong. Those guys are going to be a big problem, 13 said worriedly. From what we are seeing, they are as strong as the average hero. I still find it hard to believe that they have gone unnoticed for so long, and that on top of that, there are heroes involved with these people, Midnight said repulsed. Midoriya takes notes as quickly as he can, although it is somewhat difficult for him to take note of all the members of the army he sees. Elsewhere, Curious says that the army warriors train daily, and that they polished their bodies and minds. We see scenes of Compress, Dabi and Twice fighting several members of the army at the same time. But they are a problem, because they attract attention without having a just cause. No villain has a just cause, you fucking crazy bitch, Bakugo exclaimed furiously. Yeah, they only ruin the lives of others, Kamakiri exclaimed, arqually annoyed. Several of the students share the sentiment, while some like Midoriya have their doubts about it. As he remembered his encounter with Stain, and the fact that he was looking for a society with better heroes, albeit in an atrocious and incorrect way. And even their encounter with Shigaraki at the mall. Those army guys are really going to be a problem, Ragdoll said worriedly. Not only are they strong, but they are also fanatics about their cause. The rest of the audience nods in agreement with her. Bah, they're nothing we can't handle, Mount Lady says confidently. Although confidence is welcome, you shouldn't underestimate these guys. Vlad scolds her. We see Himiko surrounded by several members of the army, while Curios remains determined to interview her despite Himiko's rejection. Since she is not interested in the League, Himiko is an exception. Because she wants to write an article about her and her reasons for falling into villainy. And it will be a great article. The audience is shocked to hear Curious's words and cannot understand her motivation for wanting to write an article about Himiko Toga. I don't know what kind of person would want to read something like that, Kodai said, displeased. The motivations of an adolescent psychopath to kill. When you put it like that, I really find it hard to believe that there is anyone who reads that kind of stuff, Talkage said. You would actually be surprised, Tiger said. There is an audience that consumes that type of material. The fact that Destro's autobiography is a bestseller is proof of this. Curious is surprised to see that the warrior next to her is stabbed unexpectedly, and that Himiko is no longer there. She also mentions that that's why they never catch her. And for her to say it. Gran Torino said. That brat is extremely slippery and troublesome. And her quirk is perfect for that, Naomasa said. The rest of the audience watches uncomfortably as Himiko commits a murder and then disappears. Curious is surprised to see that Himiko tried to attack her from above. But the members of the army prevented her attack, and she was ejected and ended up crashing to a nearby store. The audience were greatly surprised by what they are seeing. Oh, wow, Sato exclaimed, surprised at what he was seeing. That girl is really fast, Kendo said, surprised. I didn't even see that attack coming. And that's why she's very dangerous. She is completely unpredictable and fierce, Ribbit. Asui said, scared as she remembered her encounter with Himiko at the camp. Although she is at a disadvantage against members of the army. No matter how skilled she is, they outnumber her. Rukiyu pointed. Curious. Excitedly, you don't hesitate to hurt others. You have me intrigued. What kind of life did you have? As if that mattered, Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed, to which several nodded in agreement, since they saw no value in learning more about Himiko. That girl is a complete lunatic and is extremely dangerous, Ribbit, Asui said. Others, Uraraka in particular, are somewhat curious about Himiko and her past. Himiko manages to land and tries to attack again. But Curios warns her to be careful before the place explodes to Himiko's shock and horror. It exploded, Oase said, surprised. It's that explosive quirk again, Midoriya said, taking notes in his notebook. If I had to bet, I'd say it belongs to that woman. Yeah, it is likely so, young Midoriya, All Might said in agreement with his successor. By the way, who is she? She looks familiar to me, but I can't place who she is, Najire said. This is Chitos Kazuki, an extremely annoying and nosy journalist, Aizawa said, looking at her sternly. She is the CEO of Shueisha Publishing. The audience is shocked to hear this. It sounds like you know her, Mandalay said, surprised. We met her in our debut as professional heroes. Present Mike said. She was very insistent on interviewing us, but Shota didn't want to have anything about it. So she only interviewed me, which didn't make her very happy. And apparently, she is also a member of the Meta Liberation Army too. Endeavor said sternly. Which means that the means she uses is most likely one of indoctrination. And those are the reasons why I hate the media and journalists. Aizawa said, annoyed. Not only are they annoying and intrusive, but they manipulate information to promote their ideas and messages. Curious. We warriors have no mercy. If you want to live longer, accept the interview. I still can't understand why she thinks she would accept that. Monoma said, surprised. It's pretty obvious she doesn't want to be interviewed. Not to mention that they are in the middle of a fight. Do you really think this is the time for that? Yaoyorozu exclaimed in annoyance. Several members of the army attack Himiko, but she stabs them with her needles so she can draw blood from them to drink. The audience feels extremely uncomfortable watching Himiko draw blood from several members of the army. Uraraka can't help but bring her hands to the place where Himiko stabbed her with a needle in the camp. An extremely disturbing memory for her. If I hadn't been distracted by her words, she wouldn't have drawn my blood, and I would have prevented her from infiltrating the provisional license exam. I will have to be much more careful in the future, she promised herself. Seeing how her friend is, Asui hugs her to comfort her. Curious. Activates a device in his hand. A syringe? This is how she uses her quirk. It transforms by ingesting blood. Taking from multiple people makes it difficult for them to track her. That, added to her movements, gives her incredible survivability for an assassin. How did you get to this? She asked. Yes, that's how it works, Naomasa said. From what we know about Himiko Toga's quirk, it allows her to change shape after ingesting blood, although the transformation time varies depending on the amount of blood she drinks. And she uses those syringes to be able to extract blood from her victims more easily. Ribbit, Asui said, scared. And all of that makes it extremely difficult to catch her. Gran Torino said, frustrated by this fact. That brat is really troublesome. That woman is almost as crazy as crazy. Bakugo said, surprised when he saw Curious's attitude. Yeah, you said it, Kamakiri said. Suddenly, the blood that Himiko was about to drink explodes, seriously injuring her, much to her shock. The members of the army she was fighting with also exploded. The audience yelped, horrified by what they just saw. The blood exploded, Komori exclaimed, horrified. But how is that possible? Ashido exclaimed in surprise. It must be the explosive quirk we saw before, Midoriya said, analyzed. At first I thought it might be similar to Kachin, but I think what it actually does is make certain objects explode. That's actually a good analysis, Yaoyorozu said in agreement. Bakugo feels somewhat excited when he sees the explosions, much to his discomfort. Curious. They see a description on the screen with Curious's villain name, and her quirk and abilities. Don't try to transform to camouflage yourself. There are warriors who agree to become detonators. Himiko, despite her injuries, manages to escape behind the premises, although several bombs explode, injuring her even more. The audience were even more horrified to hear the information about Curious, and to see how Himiko is injured in her escape attempt by several explosions caused by Curious. So that's her codename and quirk, Midoriya said while writing in his notebook on the page he has about Curious. Curious, Midnight said thoughtfully. It's actually an appropriate name for her. A journalist who is more curious than cautious, and who will stop at nothing to get what she wants. That's a good description, Aizawa said, annoyed as he remembered how nosy and annoying Chitos was when she tried to interview him a few years ago. Although if she keeps trying to interview that girl, that's going to end badly for her, Mount Lady said. It's better for us if they kill each other. Mirko said. Rumi, don't say those things in front of the students, Rukiu scolded, really annoyed. I don't know what exactly happened, but Chitos died during the Deka incident, so at least we won't have to worry about her. Although all the members of the League and the rest of the top brass of the Meta Liberation Army survived and formed the Paranormal Liberation Front. Hawks troughed. I really can't understand how anyone would be willing to let themselves become a human bomb. Kodai said, still surprised by what Curious said. These people are so fanatical about the cause of the army that they are willing to die for it. Gran Torino said, disgusted by this fact, which makes them extremely dangerous. The rest of the audience nods in agreement. Curious. Himiko Toga, 17 years old. Born on August 7th. Disappeared after high school. Did you see the impromptu interview with her parents? The comments of her colleagues. Everyone said she was a happy and obedient girl. That's why everyone wonders why she did it. Himiko, hit by several explosions, falls near Curious, who approaches her. Why did she abandon her normal life? The audience were surprised to hear these information about Himiko's life before and after becoming a villain. For most of them, it is something really surprising since they could not imagine at all what kind of life Himiko Toga could have had to end up this way. And they had not seen or read news related to this either. Uraraka is surprised to learn more about Himiko and wonders if understanding the girl could change things, even if just a little. Huh? What is that woman talking about? Kaminari asked, confused. Before becoming a villain, Himiko Toga was described by her friends and classmates as a very normal, happy and sociable young woman. Naomasa said. At least until she attacked a classmate and drank his blood. After that, she disappeared and several cases of stabbing murders were attributed to her. Some time later, she reappeared as a member of the League of Villains. It was a real scandal at the time, since for the vast majority of those who knew her, they could not believe that a girl like her would do something like that. Yeah, Hawks said. In my research on her, I was able to talk to some who knew her, and none of them could believe it. She was basically an average girl who went crazy overnight, according to all of them. And there was also a lot of media attention to the case, although it was not until it was revealed that she had joined the League that her name and face became public, due to laws that prohibit the publication of information about minors. Midnight stated, somewhat pitying the girl. I think I remember seeing it on the news. Mandalay said thoughtfully. Almost everyone agreed with that, except their parents. Oh, don't even remind me, Pixie Bob said, annoyed. They spent the entire interview trying to get away from it and wash their hands. Although, to be fair to them, after their daughter joined the League and her name became public, Toga's family suffered harassment and had to move. Tiger said. Although the fact that they tried to clean their hands like that is disgusting. We see an image of a younger Himiko dressed in a school uniform and surrounded by several of her smiling classmates. But her face is covered by a smiling black mask. The students got scared when seeing this image, since they did not expect to see something like this. The scene also causes some Uraraka in particular a certain discomfort, but they do not fully understand the feeling. We see in the image a young man who looks like Izuku in a fight, with blood coming out of his mouth, while Himiko watches him intently and the mask begins to break. The audience, Midoriya and Uraraka in particular, were greatly surprised to see this scene. Hey, what is all this? Kaminari asked, confused at what was happening. If I had to bet, I'd say they're Toga's memories, or a representation of them. Yaoyorozu said thoughtfully. Apparently these are from before she became a villain, and still had a normal life. That's a good observation, young Yaoyorozu, Nezu said. And that boy? Ashido asked curiously when she noticed it. He looks just like Deku, Bakugo said, shocked, staring at Midoriya. Hey? You already knew her, and you didn't tell us anything, Mainta exclaimed in surprise. What? No, Midoriya exclaimed in surprise. I don't know who that guy is, but it's not me. I didn't know who Toga was until I met her at the attack on the camp. That boy, whoever he is, just shares an uncanny resemblance to you then, Sato said, surprised. And that must be part of the reason why that girl likes you, Kendo said, piecing Toga's uncanny obsession. She must remember him, whoever he is. Curious. I know. But tell me you're suffering yourself. What does she mean by that? Ashido asked, not understanding. Does she understand her? Does she know why she is like that? Yanagi said, surprised. I think I know, but I'll wait to be sure. Yes, I'm not mistaken. That mask she has on is a symbolism, Nezu realized. We see a scene where Redistro tells Curious that if she wants to move her readers, she should show more than results and rumors, that she should interview and see people's faces, because the articles that guide people have a heart of their own. Back in the present, she says that she will shake hearts using Himiko on behalf of the Meta Liberation Army. She also asks her why she went crazy. The audience is shocked to see Curious's past and her motivation to write articles that promote the army's cause, and the fact that she plans to make Himiko a martyr for the army's cause. I still can't understand what kind of mentality a person would have to read that, Kodai said. Those journalists, manipulating information and promoting their own agendas, Aizawa said, annoyed. Before I didn't understand your dislike for media Shoda, but seeing this I can understand you better, Present Mike said, to which several people nodded in agreement. Himiko. Hey, what's a normal life? Curious is surprised after hearing this. We see Himiko's face stained with blood. The audience is shocked to hear the tone of the words from Himiko Toga. She sounds empty. Uraraka muttered. What is a normal life? Is that question serious? Bakugo exclaimed, surprised and annoyed. She seriously doesn't know that? If so, then she is crazier than I thought, Monoma said, surprised. Yes, ribbit, Asui said, looking scared at Toga and her face stained with blood. It's surprising that she can even move considering the injuries she received, Recovery Girl said, surprised. Curious. That expression makes her look like a doll. You finally answered me. Doll? Is she blind? Tsubaraba exclaimed in surprise. At this point, I don't know who is crazier, Monoma said, shaking his head. Does it matter, copycat? They are both crazy villains, Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed with both Himiko Toga and Curious. Himiko. The Meta Liberation Army wants to create a wonderful world. I like them. Slowly stands up. A wonderful world. What they want to create is an anarchic society whose social scale is based on how strong you are, Mirko exclaimed, annoyed. Is that your ideal world? Uraraka said, yelled, surprising herself. She cannot understand how someone would like a world like that. That sounds horrible, Ajo said. People with weak quirks will be completely unprotected in a world like this. And that is why we must do everything possible to prevent such a thing from happening, Present Mike said, to which the rest of the audience nods with determination. They must stop the army and the League to protect the people, no matter the cost. In a flashback, we see Himiko holding a blood-stained cutter in her hand, and how the mask she was wearing ends up breaking, showing Himiko's true smile. Curious is surprised and happy to see Himiko. The audience feels extremely uncomfortable watching this scene. Nezu, for his part, realizes that he was not wrong and his theory about Himiko was correct. Himiko, with a wide smile and covered in blood, so I'll live normally. Does she seriously think that's a normal life? Kendo exclaimed in surprise. Attack and kill people to drink their blood. She is undoubtedly crazy, although I never thought she was that crazy, ribbit, Asui said, terrified as she remembered her encounter with Toga and how she tried to befriend her even after attacking her and Uraraka. It's actually not so far-fetched for her to think that way, Nezu said, to the surprise of the rest of the audience. Huh? What do you mean, sir? Ida asked, surprised and confused. Studies on quirks have shown that they sometimes tend to influence the mind and personality of the person who has them, Nezu said. And they also often make them have interests in certain things. In her particular case, her quirk is related to blood, which probably caused her interest in blood. And that happens with many people who have similar quirks. Yeah, Vlad said. I also have a quirk related to blood, and I have also had an interest in blood. But I have been able to control those impulses thanks to quirk therapy. B. But then what happened to her? Didn't she do therapy and get out of control? Komori asked, scared. I don't know, but I guess we'll see, Kirwaro said. The rest of the students reflect on how quirks can influence the individual. Some of them had to take quirk therapy to be able to live in society and wonder what happened to Himiko. We see a news broadcast where the presenter announces that the young girl who attacked a classmate is still missing and that they are still looking for her. Headlines asks why, and that a tragedy occurred at graduation. The audience were shocked when they see this. That is the incident that led her to become a villain, Rukiu said. That was her first known attack. Yeah, this must be the media coverage of the case, Nejire said, surprised. A classmate of Himiko mentions that she was very happy and sociable, and that he still can't believe she was involved in something like that. The audience looks with surprise at this statement that does not match the image they have of Himiko Toga, and some like Uraraka wonder what it must have been like during that time. Another classmate says that she saw the attack and how Himiko stuck a straw in the wound so she could drink the blood of the attacked boy. We see a scene of Himiko doing this, and her expression crying with happiness. The girl comments that Himiko seemed ecstatic and had a terrifying expression. That's so disgusting, Ashido said, repulsed. Her expression, Asui said fearfully. It's so scary. And you can tell she enjoyed that too much, Kodai said, displeased. The next to speak through an intercom is Himiko's mother, where she apologizes for her daughter's actions, and that she tried but couldn't change her, before stating that Himiko is the daughter of a demon. So she knew there was something wrong with her daughter, Mirko said, narrowing his eyes. The others, like Uraraka, feels bad watching this, as they cannot understand what kind of mother would talk like that about her daughter, and call her a monster to get rid of all blame. We see a young Himiko with blood on her face, and who has a dead bird in her hands, and shows it to her parents, saying that it is very cute. So the crazy girl was already crazy, even as a child, Bakugo said with disgust. I can't understand how anyone would like something like that, Ribbit, Asui said, displeased. She killed that little bird and thinks that's cute? Koji exclaimed in disgust. The worst thing is that she doesn't even seem to notice what's wrong there, Nejire said, surprised and saddened. I would really like to know how she was treated if she received quirk therapy. Could all this horror have been avoided? Nezu thought. In the present, Curious analyzes Himiko's words and realizes that this is the real Himiko, and that she was always like this. Himiko smiles. The audience is surprised to hear these words. She was always like that, Komori said, surprised. She's crazier than I thought, Shoji said, surprised, as he remembered his meeting with Himiko at the camp. I can't say I'm surprised, Nezu said. So to speak, it's in her blood. Curious. I knew it. You are the darkness of Quirk Society. What? What does she mean? Kaminari asked, surprised. Darkness of Quirk Society? Takoyami said, surprised. And what crazy BS is that? Bakugo said. Well, in this modern society, there are people who are rejected for their quirks, either because they give them unusual appearances in mutants, or because they are labeled as villain quirks, Nezu said. So I think that's what she means. It is unfortunately one of the problems facing society, Kamui Woods said, frustrated by this fact. It has improved a little over the years, but not enough. The audience reflects on the words of their director. Some of them, those who have mutant quirks, and Shinso, who suffered ridicule due to his villain quirk, knows that this is true. In addition to the fact that studies have shown that people in these groups are more likely to fall into villainy. And it leads many to wonder if something like this was what happened to Himiko Toga. Himiko falls to the ground because she has multiple injuries. Curious. Poor thing. You are destroyed inside and out. You killed your true self because of the oppression of the quirks. Kneels next to Himiko. The quirk you were born with made you irrationally interested in blood. As a child, Himiko saw the dead bird, while thinking how cute it was. Curious comments that what made Himiko suffer the most was that the appreciation and admiration that everyone feels combined with her interest in blood. And that society could not accept that, and that is why she hides it and restricts herself with a mask. The girl Himiko sucks the little bird to the disgust of her parents, who take it away from her and tell her that she should live normally. They also say that their daughter's face is scary, to the confusion of the girl, who does not see that she is doing anything wrong. This would confirm it. Midnight said. Yeah, that girl suppressed her way of being due to social oppression that frowned upon her interest in blood and led her to build a false self. Until finally she couldn't take it anymore and broke down. Nezu said. Unfortunately, by doing this, they prevented her from finding a way to fit better into society. It seems to be a case where the therapy was mishandled, if she did receive therapy. Recovery Girl said, now sympathizing for the young villain. In quirk therapies for people who have quirks related to blood, this is not completely suppressed. It is about directing their interest in animal blood and teaching them impulse control techniques. But it is not recommended to completely eliminate contact with blood. The audience, especially Uraraka, are surprised to hear this and wonder if Himiko's life could have been different if she had acted differently. Shoto feels uncomfortable with this because to some extent it reminds him of what happened to his mother, who endured his father's abuse for years, while also trying to raise her children until she reached her breaking point and ended up attacking him. Others, for their part, are indifferent to this because they do not believe that Himiko's life could have been different. In the present, an upset Himiko tries to stab Curious to silence her, but she prevents it by invoking a support article from the intranet, which blocks the attack and uses it to hurt her with an explosion. That woman is really very skilled, Hawk said. She is quite well trained and also has support items. She's even made her own ultimate moves, Midoriya said as he wrote it down in his notebook. The people in the army are going to be quite a challenge when we face them. And the members of the League, they did survive, Shoto said. And let's not forget that they still have that thing, Sato said, reminding them of Machia. And who said that you are going to participate? Aizawa asked, looking seriously at his students. There are too many of them, sensei. I don't think heroes can handle an army of that magnitude alone, Ida argued, making a robotic cut. And even less so if his members are as strong as the average hero. I hate to admit it, Shota, but they might be right, Present Mike said. It is possible that the students will have to get involved in an eventual battle against the League and the army. I don't like the idea at all, but there might be no other option, Nezu said, troubled with the idea, but recognizing that there might not be any other options. If we want to have a future, we must all fight for it. As Himiko falls, Curious says how Himiko's normality fits into the world the army is trying to create, and that is why Himiko must become a martyr for their cause. We see an image of Himiko seriously injured, while Curious holds her and some members of the army surround them, which emulates Michelangelo's work, The Mercy. The audience feels uncomfortable watching this scene, while some are indifferent towards this. Himiko gets up at full speed to flee, while Curious follows her, determined not to let her escape, stating that they went there. Is she serious? Does she really think she's going to let you kill her and make her a martyr? Kendo asked in shock. Himiko, What a disgusting woman. I am not unhappy. She looks for something in her belt, which turns out to be a small vial of blood, which she takes and uses to transform. When I'm happy, I smile. Just as you kiss the people you love, I drink your blood. That's what she thinks. That's good, Shoji said, surprised. This girl is really weird, Asui said. Is it really? Uraraka said, drawing the other's attention. From what the director said, her quirk leads her to a certain extent to act like this. Yes, but that doesn't mean it's okay. Her actions have hurt many people, Yanagi said. I know, and I'm not excusing her actions. I just think that we know nothing about her, or how she thinks, or her idea of what it is to love. And despite all her crimes, she is still a person. Shouldn't we help her too? I agree with you, young Uraraka, All Might said, to the surprise of the audience. We shouldn't ignore the villains and their reasons. That was something I realized when I found out who Shigaraki was. And if we can do something to help them, we should do it. I understand how you feel, but I don't think anything can be done, Aizawa said sternly. Regardless of their circumstances, they are villains now, and trying to reason with them is impossible. And if we try, they could endanger lives. He is right, Yagi, young lady, Gran Torino said sternly. I share the pain of seeing my friend's grandson like this, but people's lives are our priority. The audience, the students in particular, reflect on this, and whether or not they should help the villains. Most share Aizawa and Gran Torino's thoughts, while others reflect on whether they should still help them as well. It seems like she had blood saved, Midoriya said, surprised when he noticed it. I wonder who it belonged to. I don't think I want to find out, Hagakure said, uncomfortable thinking about it. We'll find out anyway, though, Nejire said. Uraraka's eyes widened at what's happening. Himiko transforms into a double of Uraraka. I'm not unhappy. The audience were greatly shocked to see that Himiko has become a double of Uraraka. Ah, several people exclaimed, surprised and confused when they saw this. She became Ochako, Ashido exclaimed in surprise. But how is that possible? Hagakure said, surprised. She drew my blood during the attack on the camp, Uraraka said, surprised by what is happening on the screen. But I didn't know she still had it. I thought she had already used it all when she infiltrated the provisional license exam. I still can't believe something like this happened, Power Loader said. But at least that helped us prepare measures against her. This is certainly strange to see, Sato said, surprised. Yeah, ribbit, Asui said, uncomfortable seeing Toga in the form of her friend. Curious is excited to see that Himiko had blood saved. Himiko tries to flee, but the army members attack her. Curious, I know your quirk only changes your appearance. You wanted to die being as pretty as possible. Poor dear. That woman is completely crazy, Bakugo said, disgusted when he saw Curious's reaction. And I don't think that's why she used blood, Midoriya said thoughtfully. She is possibly trying to escape, although it won't be easy in her circumstances. If they kill her, it's better for us, Mirko said indifferently, much to Ryukyu's annoyance. Incredibly, she managed to survive. I don't know how, but she did it, Hawks thought, remembering seeing Toga at the formation of the Paranormal Liberation Front. Himiko. It's the blood I have left over. She remembers when she infiltrated the provisional hero license exams to get close to Izuku. Ochako's blood, which Izuku trusts. I still can't believe that a villain managed to infiltrate the exams, Ida exclaimed, making a robotic cut. Though at least security increased after that. To think that crazy woman could attack us, Yanagi said awkwardly. And she kidnapped that girl from Shiksu. She was certainly lucky to survive that, Komori said. It was certainly an unusual event, and one that will not be repeated, Snipe said with confidence. Himiko. It's wonderful. I also want to get closer to who I want. Better do not do it, Marco said. Curious. Give me a few words. Himiko. Terrified, no. That woman shows with her actions that she is completely crazy. Bakugo said in disbelief when he saw Curious's attitude. And what do you say, Bakubro? Who would think of trying to interview her and ask her for statements in circumstances like that? Kirishima said, surprised. Someone who has no sense of conservation, Shishida said. Himiko brings her hand closer to Curious. Himiko, I want to be like you. When she finally manages to make contact with Curious, something unexpected happens. As she is able to use Ochako's quirk to levitate Curious, the audience became speechless when they as what happened. They can hardly believe what they are seeing Himiko use Uraraka's quirk. Uraraka herself was surprised and incredulous at this. What? Several people exclaimed in surprise. How the hell is this possible? Bakugo exclaimed in surprise. How did the crazy woman manage to use Pink Cheek's quirk? She can copy quirks? But how? Monoma exclaimed, surprised that Himiko has an ability similar to his quirk. That's a great question. Ida said, surprised. If she could do that, why didn't she use it before? Wait. Is that what I think it is? Nezu thought, stupefied at what he is seeing. Himiko. The police and the heroes are always chasing us. I had to get used to being alert. She then proceeds to touch several members of the army to send them flying. 2 people were nicer if I pretended to be a schoolgirl. They won't catch me. I can use Ochako's quirk. Half of Himikochako's face falls apart, revealing her true appearance. The audience is surprised and uncomfortable seeing this, due to Himiko using Uraraka's quirk to levitate the members of the army, and the sight of her face that is half her own and half Uraraka's. That's horrible, Ashido said, disgusted by seeing Himikochako's face. It's so creepy, Hagakure said, horrified. Uraraka herself was upset to see how Himiko was using her quirk. She became a little sad when she heard Himiko's thoughts about how people were nicer to her when she took on the appearance of a schoolgirl. Midoriya remembers his encounter with Toga at the exam and how she was alert. Curious. How? Your quirk should only modify your appearance. It's the same thing we are asking ourselves, Bakugo exclaimed. How is it possible that the crazy girl can do that? According to the records, her quirk only allows her to change shape once she drinks the blood of the person in question. Naomasa said, surprised. She shouldn't be able to copy quirks. Curious. Did she evolve just now? The fear of death enhanced her quirk. The audience were surprised and greatly confused to hear this. Did her quirk evolve? What? Kaminari scratched his head. What does that mean? Ashido asked, confused by this, as did most of the students who were not familiar with this term. A quirk awakening is something extremely unusual. Only a few cases are known in the world. It is a phenomenon that continues to surprise scientists. Nezu said, surprised. They generally involve extreme situations and strong emotions, which increase the power of the quirk or grant it new abilities. That seems to be the case of that girl. Being in an extreme situation and desperate to survive, her quirk evolved, allowing her to also copy quirks. The audience is surprised to hear these words from the director. Midoriya writes this down on the page he has about Toga in his notebook. Oh shit. This just got even more complicated. Mirko said, worried about this turn of events. That girl has become even more dangerous. Rukiyu said, worried. If she survives those injuries, it's going to be a problem. She survived. And now I understand part of the reason why. Hawks said worriedly. Himiko. I will live loving, and I will die normally. She makes the same gesture with her hands as Uraraka to release her quirk. Then we see a close-up of her face, which is half Uraraka's and half her own, covered in blood. I'm still going to fall in love more. The audience, Uraraka in particular, is horrified to recognize what Himiko is going to do. These people may be villains, but that doesn't mean they deserve such a fate. Not to mention that they are going to die due to Uraraka's quirk. Curious. Surprised that would be an excellent headline. Himiko releases Uraraka's quirk with the same gesture of hers. And Curious and the army members fall to their deaths. Their blood marks the scene behind Himiko, and Uraraka's face dissolves as she smiles. But she falls shortly after. Oh really? You fall to your death and only think about that? Bakugo exclaimed in surprise. That woman is as crazy as Toga, ribbit. Asui said disgustedly, before turning her attention to Uraraka, who is pale and trying to hold back vomit. Seeing this, Asui hugs her. She used my quirk too. Uraraka is so horrified by what she saw on the screen that she can barely speak. I understand you, Ochako. Ashido said, approaching to comfort her as well. I don't even want to think about my quirk being used for something like that. Nor I, Hagakure said, approaching him as well. That face will be in my nightmares. Minta said, scared when he saw her. Elsewhere, Spinner says that more members of the army keep coming no matter how many they defeat. Several members of the army approach to attack them, but Dabi incinerates them with his flames without much effort. Dabi comments that Spinner failed to defeat any of them. Well, yes, there are more than 100,000. Or did you just forget about that, you stupid lizard? Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed. That Spinner guy doesn't seem to be very strong. Pixie Bob said thoughtfully. But Dabi, on the other hand, can eliminate those guys with almost no effort. That guy is going to be a problem, Mandalay said worriedly. From what we've seen of him so far, he's someone quite strong and has a strange interest in the current #1 hero. The rest of the audience nods in agreement with her words. Both father and son Todoroki worry as they remember the fact that Dabi seems to have an interest in them. Twice worries when he doesn't see Himiko and wonders where she is. With a little bit of dead luck, Mirko said, much to Rukyu's annoyance. She survived, although I'm still not sure how. Hawks thought. Elsewhere, Himiko manages to hide in a shed, but is aware that she is seriously injured. The audience is a little surprised to see this, since they did not expect that Himiko, despite being seriously injured, manages to take refuge in a shed. Himiko, I look like Izuku. Maybe I shouldn't have killed them, but I had no choice. At the end of the day, we destroy what we don't like. Falls unconscious on the ground right to Mira. It seems that the members of the League have also adopted Shigaraki's mentality, Aizawa said. That brat and his friends, Gran Torino said. What? Does she look like Deku? What the hell is wrong with the crazy girl? Bakugo exclaimed. Midoriya feels uncomfortable by Toga's claim to look like him. Elsewhere, Shigaraki is tired because he hasn't been able to sleep well in a while. But he continues fighting. It's surprising he can even stand. Recovery Girl said, surprised. First the girl, and now him. These villains are certainly pretty tough. Tiger said, surprised. It doesn't matter how tough the villains are. Sooner or later they will fall, Bakugo exclaimed. That's how you speak, Bakubro. We will defeat them no matter what, Kirishima exclaimed. Shigaraki. When you are sleepy, you see things move that don't move, and we hear things. We see several members of the army from Shigaraki's perspective. You receive unnecessary information. I know my body has errors. What is this? The audience watches Shigaraki's perspective in surprise. And that's part of the reason why getting a good night's sleep is important, Recovery Girl said. Although under Shigaraki's circumstances sleeping well is practically impossible. Present Mike said. Especially with that thing. We see a flashback to Shigaraki's past, a studio, and a photo of a heroine Nana hugging a boy Kotaro. The audience, Gran Torino, and All Might in particular, were shocked to see this. Midoriya feels a strange feeling of sadness that he doesn't know where it comes from. Eh? What is that? Hagakure asked. surprised at what she was seeing. Yeah, who are they? And why are they there? Kaminari asked. They are my mentor, Nana Shimura and her son Kitaro, All Might said, saddened to see them. This greatly surprises the audience. B. But what are they doing there? Awase asked, surprised by this scene. I have no idea, Shozaki said at a loss. Shigaraki. It's another flashback. I don't keep the memories, but I do keep the emotions. We see Shigaraki's face and how he struggles to stay awake. Flashback? This is another one of his memories, Midoriya exclaimed. Yes, Deku, we already noticed it, Bakugo said. That means he must have seen that photo at some point. Gran Torino said, surprised by this. So Kitaro kept it all those years. What happened to them? All Might asked, interested in knowing what had happened to Kitaro's life, and what had happened for her son to end up becoming one of the most wanted villains in all of Japan. This is consistent with dissociative amnesia, Recovery Girl said. He remembers fragments of his past. Shigaraki. That day, I felt relieved. What was it? We see a girl, but the shadows prevent us from seeing her face well. She says nothing's wrong. The audience is surprised to see this, and wonder who the girl in Shigaraki's memories is. Shigaraki. Yes, I'm going to see it. I could watch the whole thing. For once you are right. Yes, we are going to see this. Let's see it in its entirety, Tetsu said. We'll have to wait and see, Kendo said. We see the girl from before who says, I support you, Tenko. Who this girl is, Takage said. And how did she know Shigaraki? They seem to have been close, Midoriya said thoughtfully, although he also feels somewhat saddened when he sees the girl for some reason he cannot understand. All Might and Gran Torino also feel surprised and saddened to see her, because even though they cannot fully see her face, it is strangely familiar. Shigaraki. It looks like a broken tape recorder. Damn, I'm in a bad mood now. He climbs a nearby wall and touches several members of the army, disintegrating them on the spot, then vomits, while Spinner watches him from a distance. The audience is shocked to see what just happened on the screen. Ah, several exclaimed in a state of shock upon seeing how Shigaraki disintegrate the members of the army. That's really horrible, Komori exclaimed when he saw the effects of decay. I know those people are villains, and to some extent they brought it on themselves. But it's still unpleasant to see. Asui said, displeased. And to think that could have been me. She thought, terrified at the thought of what would have happened if Aizawa hadn't saved her by deactivating Shigaraki's quirk. Did I see it correctly? The decay affected even those it didn't touch, Midoriya exclaimed, surprised when he realized this. The audience was surprised and horrified when they realized this too. It's true. I saw it too, Ida exclaimed, surprised when he realized this. But how is it possible? Namasa said, surprised. From what we know about his quirk, it is necessary for his 5 fingers to make contact with the object to destroy it. Don't tell me he also got a quirk awakening, Gyro said, horrified at this possible scenario. Fuck. Just what we needed, Mirko exclaimed. First the crazy girl, and now him. Spinner. Surprised, did I see that right? The decay affected even those he did not touch. We see a close-up of Shigaraki's face. He is tired, and you can still see some vomit on his face, but he still smiles. Shigaraki what? Yuwa, several exclaimed when they saw Shigaraki's expression. Even that guy noticed it, Takage said worriedly. Although he doesn't know what's going on with Shigaraki either. Even we are not sure what is happening to him. Recovery Girl said. It could be a quirk awakening, but we're not entirely sure. Whatever it is, it's bad, Mandalay said worriedly, to which the rest of the audience nodded in agreement. Dabi sees all this and decides that he will also kill the members of the army, since according to himself, he is bad at repressing himself. Because it doesn't cost him anything to believe that? Mirko asked sarcastically. This guy really is very strange, Subaraba said. And dangerous, Komori said, scared. But before he can do anything, a huge piece of ice falls near him, alerting him. Now the audience is very surprised to see this, especially a certain student and his father. Ice, Shoto exclaimed in surprise. Is there anyone in the army who has an ice quirk? It seems so, Endeavor said. Whoever it is, he is another guy who will have to be taken into account. That's for sure, 13 said. Next we see who attacked him. A member of the army who is wearing a parka and whose only eyes can be seen. So that's the guy with the ice quirk, Midoriya said while writing in his notebook about this new villain. I guess we'll see about it, Deku-kun, Uraraka said. Dabi. Ice, huh? It is quite large, but hides its presence well. I think I got stronger. Now I realize it. Yes, that ice guy must be a pretty tough opponent, Aizawa said thoughtfully. He managed to go unnoticed until he attacked him, and he seems to have good control of his quirk. That guy is really going to cause us problems, Present Mike said worriedly. All the members of the army are pretty well trained, but I have the feeling that this guy is on another level. I don't know why, but I share the feeling, Midnight said worriedly. And Dabi is another one you shouldn't take your eyes off, Hawks said upon hearing that he claimed to be stronger. Correction. We should not take our eyes off any of them, Ectoplasm said, to which everyone nods in agreement. Dabi, you're strong, right? Getten. Dabi, the blue fire user. The only one in the league that can attack from afar. Oh, that's true, Ragdoll said. Of all the members of the league, Dabi is the only one who can perform long-range attacks. The rest can only attack at short or medium range. Since Kurogiri's arrest, yes, Naomasa said. He is the only other member of the league who could perform long-range attacks, not counting All for One and his multiple quirks. Don't even remind me, All Might said, annoyed at the thought of his nemesis. Although not for long, now that Himiko Toga had a quirk awakening and Shigaraki seems to have had one too. Kamui Woods said, worried about this like the rest of the audience. Damn. As if they didn't give us enough problems already, Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed. Getten generates more ice and uses it to propel himself into the sky, but you didn't use your flames instantly. Either he's waiting for something, or his quirk has some problem. The audience is surprised to hear these words. Now he said it, it's true, Hawks said thoughtfully. When Dabi attacks, he doesn't usually do so immediately, and almost always seems to avoid contact with the fire. Oh, that's great information. We could definitely use it when we fight Dabi, said Mirko, excited at having found a possible weak point of one of the villains. Midoriya, meanwhile, updating his information about Dabi in his notebook. Now that I think about it, all those wounds on his body look like burn marks. It's certainly strange, Midoriya said, surprised. He has a fire quirk, so he should have some resistance to burns. Now that you mention it, it's true, Shoto said, looking at Dabi. He has burn marks is certainly striking. Unless, like that guy said, he has some kind of problem with his quirk, Ashido said thoughtfully. From what they said, its blue flames are hotter than normal, so it might not have adequate resistance to those temperatures. Something similar happens with my acid. I had to develop resistance to it, which was a difficult process and painful. Oh, maybe it's not impossible, Endeavor said, causing the rest of the audience to look at him. What is it? Naomasa asked. Any theories you have might be helpful. Or it could be that his body is not suitable for his quirk. Something similar happened with my oldest son. He had a fire quirk stronger than mine, but he inherited his mother's ice resistance, which prevented him from using his quirk, Endeavor explained. Both are possible. Although for now, without more information, we cannot rule out any theory, Nezu said thoughtfully. Does your brother who studies medicine have a fire quirk, Todoroki? Kaminari asked. No, Natsuo has an ice quirk like my mother. The one who had that quirk was my older brother Toya, Shoto said. You have another brother? Wow, I had no idea. Ida said, surprised since Shoto had never told them about him. He only knew about his sister who was a teacher, and who took care of him, and his brother who studied medicine. It's not an easy topic, Shoto said sadly. He died when I was little, and I barely remember him. Oh, I'm very sorry, Ida apologized, bowing. It's okay. You had no way of knowing, Shoto said. Endeavor, for his part, is saddened to remember not only the death of his firstborn, but also the fact that Shoto does not even remember him for taking him away from his brothers when they were children. Bakugo and Midoriya, who are the only ones besides father and son Todoroki who know about the family's situation and Toya's death, feel somewhat uncomfortable and sad about this. Dabi, it seems like you don't know, so I'll explain. Attacks him with his flames, the ice is melting. Gitten's ice disappears, due to the heat of the flames. He's not wrong about that, Shoto said. That ice guy is in trouble. Definitely, Ribbit, Asui said. Midoriya observes carefully to see what abilities the villains have. Getten. It's true. That's not good. He falls, but manages to summon more ice from nearby stores and places. The audience is greatly surprised to see what happens on the screen. Hey, did he just do what I think he did? Takage exclaimed in surprise. If you saw him summon ice from other places, then yes, Kodai responded. It seems that his quirk is not like Todoroki's, Midoriya said as he took notes in his notebook. Todoroki can create ice, but this guy can manipulate it. That is certainly. Yes, nerd, we can see it, Bakugo exclaimed annoyed. Dude, that's certainly weird, Kaminari said. I'm sorry. Midoriya apologized, embarrassed. Though that is actually a good observation, Nezu said. From what we could see, this villain can manipulate ice. Getten. It seems like you don't know, so I'll tell you. I control the ice. I always trained my quirk. I didn't even go to school. Uses the ice he summoned to form a giant snake. I trained much more than the heroes. The leader made me strong. Yes, this confirms it, Midoriya said about Getten's quirk. That guy can manipulate ice, and he's quite skilled. He said, surprised to notice that Getten can create an ice snake. He only trained his quirk? And he didn't even go to school, Mount Lady exclaimed in surprise. So it seems, Rukiyu said, surprised. Although I am surprised that the government did not notice something like this. That guy probably hasn't even been registered. In other words, he doesn't exist, Vlad said thoughtfully. But how does he not exist? He's right there, Kaminari exclaimed, confused. That's not what it means, Jammin J meant, Gyro said. It is said that he probably does not have documents or records of that type. So for the government, it is as if he did not exist. Kaminari nods in understanding. And surely the same thing happened with Shigaraki, Gran Torino said. All for one wasn't going to be stupid enough to record it, so it was like it didn't exist. That damn bastard, All Might said, furious at what his nemesis had done to his mentor's grandson. Dabi, you had a great life, didn't you? Does he really think that's a great life? Shoto asked, confused. Ah, Todoroki, I think he's just being sarcastic, Yaoyorozu said. Oh, I see, Shoto responds, reflecting on it. Dabi attacks him with his flames, while saying that he pities him. Yes, he is definitely being sarcastic, Shishida said. A strange form of compassion, 13 said when he saw that he attacked him. He's a villain. Did you expect anything else? Vlad asked coldly. And to be fair, they are fighting, not making friends, Cementros said. although I don't know why. But at least there he seemed sincere. Hawks thought surprised, hearing how Dabi feels sorry for Getten for the life he had. I really would like to know who he is, and how he got there. If I knew, it would be much easier. Getten, don't think that weak flames will melt the ice. The ice creature and Dabi's flames collide. The audience is surprised to see the clash between ice and fire. Incredible. Shoji said, almost speechless at what he is seeing. It's really impressive. Shoto said, equally surprised. It may be a villain fight, but it's still cool. Bakugo said excitedly as he watched the fight. Compress tells Dabi to watch where he attacks since the flames almost hit him too. That guy is very careless, Endeavor said. He has no control over the flames, and they even reach his allies. He's a villain, Cementros said. Not to say that he probably learned to use his quirk on his own, unlike students who receive training and learn to minimize damage. Compress also recaps everything that happened, and where his companions are. Dabi is with him, Shigaraki is with Spinner. He doesn't know where Himiko is, and now he realizes that Twice is not with them either. Thanks for that. Everything happened so fast that it is difficult for me to remember everything that happened, Kaminari said. Yeah, Awase said. Everything became chaos. Dabi and Compress are there fighting against the ice type and other members of the army. Shigaraki and Spinner are together also fighting with members of the army. Toga is seriously injured in that shed, Midoriya said, recapitulating the events. Although now that you mention it, it's true. Where is Twice? He's probably somewhere else fighting with members of the army, Yaoyorozu said, to which the rest of the audience nods in agreement with this theory. Elsewhere, Twice finds the badly injured Himiko and is shocked by this. Or not. He was looking for Toga, Ida said. So it seems, Asui said, somewhat surprised. He cares so much about his partner, Uraraka said, somewhat surprised to see how the members of the league care about each other. He won't be able to do anything anyway, Mirko said. The girl is too injured to survive without proper medical care, and I doubt he will be able to receive her there, Recovery Girl said. She managed to survive, although I'm not sure of all the details, Hawks thought. Twice's voices say several contradictory things about Himiko's condition. Ooh, what's wrong with that guy? Kaminari asked, dumbfounded, when he saw Twice. I have no idea, Ribbit, Asui said. He must have some kind of disorder, Recovery Girl said, guessed. Maybe one with multiple personalities. Twice holds a handkerchief in his hand. You gave me this handkerchief. Give up, she's going to die. No, you have to live. Hugs her with tears in his eyes. You are my home, and that of the entire league. You're the only one I need. I will kill them. The audience, Uraraka in particular, is surprised to see how Twice cares for Toga, and what she means not only to him, but to the entire league. Several people who look very similar to each other approach the place. Hey, what is this? Ashido asked, uncomfortable with the scene. It must be some quirk, Yaoyorozu said thoughtfully. Maybe one similar to Ectoplasm Sensei's. Yes, that makes sense, Midoriya said, although he has not yet written it down in his notebook because it is not confirmed. At the Redistro Tower, Skeptic mentions that Twice met with Himiko and gave the other members of the army the direction, and that Himiko is still alive, but that she will have to die for killing Curious. Watch everything from a screen. Oh, wow, looks like someone is in trouble, Fukudashi said. That guy is determined to avenge the death of his partner, and with Toga in that state, he won't be able to defend himself, Shinso said. Although Twice is still there, Shota said. He could still do something. Yeah, Hawk said. Although it may not seem like a big deal, you would do well not to underestimate Twice, especially since he somehow managed to use the full potential of his quirk again. He is right, students, Aizawa said. They would do well to never underestimate a villain. That could be a very serious mistake. The students nod in agreement. Skeptic. Jin Bubegawara. Twice. Quirk. Double. A close-up of Twice is seen looking surprised and horrified at the people who approach them. The audience is surprised to see Twice's expression when he sees the people approaching him and the badly injured Himiko Toga. Hey? Why does he act like this? Kirishima asked, surprised. Well, he's outnumbered. Maybe that's why. Monoma said that he doesn't see what's striking in Twice's scared expression. No, he's right. Kenui Wood said, staring at Twice. He didn't react like that even during the raid on his hideout when we rescued the kidnapped boy. And it wasn't like that when we fought the attack on the camp either. Shoto said that he remembers fighting with Twice, and he did not show any fear towards him. Then why would he react like that now? Ida asked, surprised and confused. Skeptic. In a sense, he is the opposite of Toga. A man who multiplied, almost killed himself, and lost his personality. We see a flashback of the Twice clones fighting and killing each other. He released his quirk to live as a human, but messed with his mind. The audience were surprised and shocked to hear this about Twice, and how he ended up like that. Everyone was too shocked to say anything. As Midoriya writes down this new information about Twice, we see that the people who approach Twice have his face, and they attack him. Oh my god, Shiozaki exclaimed when she saw what was happening on the screen. No wonder he's so scared. Recovery Girl said, moved. If what that skeptic guy said about Twice is true, then this must be extremely traumatic for him. He's basically facing his biggest fear. I really feel bad for that guy right now. Hagakure said, uncomfortable seeing this. He may be a villain, but it's still too cruel to face his greatest fear. Why, you said it. Kota said awkwardly. To a certain extent, he understands the feeling since his greatest fear is insects. But he is trying to leave that fear behind to improve as a hero. Although little by little, not like the case of Twice who has to face his greatest fear without anesthesia. Because I have the feeling that something really bad is going to happen? Midoriya asked. Unfortunately, it happened. Somehow he managed to overcome his trauma and use the full potential of his quirk again. It's really going to be a big problem when we face him. It would be best to get rid of him first. Not counting Shigaraki and Machia, Twice is the most dangerous villain in the league. Hawks thought worriedly. They see that it is Skeptic who controls these copies from a computer, which he creates with his quirk. We get to see an introduction to Skeptic that includes his name, villain alias, and quirk. So that's him. Midoriya said, while writing down Skeptic's information in his notebook. And he is the one who controls the copies of Twice to scare him. His quirk doesn't seem like much, but he's learned to use it very well. Pixie Bob said. Another villain to watch out for. Tiger said. Oh, wow. The army has managed to infiltrate many key positions. Egdeshot said. To think that this guy is a member of the board of directors of Feel Good Inc. and a member of the Meta Liberation Army. Although he is not so well known to the public, but yes. Kamui Wu. Dia said. It is a shame for us heroes not to have realized this before. All Might said, with which the rest of the audience nods in agreement, still not being able to believe that they have overlooked something like that. If I hadn't been so focused on All for One and his followers, maybe I would have realized this. Skeptic. With your quirk, we could resurrect Redistro if something happened. The tragedy of Distro will not be repeated. Do you understand, Bubegawara? It all depends on how it is used. Why don't you understand your value? What a disgusting guy, Nejire said, displeased. He just wants to use his power without worrying about it. That guy may be a villain, but that is a very cruel thing. You said it, Senpai. Uraraka said, displeased. Yes, that is something really unpleasant. Shoto said, annoyed by this fact. Tragedy. Your idol committed suicide after being arrested, Bakugo exclaimed, annoyed with the villain. Twice his doubles attack him, much to his horror. Skeptic. We'll drag you into the Meta Liberation Army. The audience is shocked and horrified as the events unfold, while the next episode begins to play.